Chapter 348. Just when Feng Yinshun felt that she couldn't figure it out, AI Xiaoxi behind her had already calculated a number with her mobile phone. 99997 billion? Well, it seems that we have indeed hooked up with a big shot. Looking at the numbers on the phone, Feng Yinshun felt that his tongue was a little tied. For an ordinary person, billions or even tens of billions of funds were indeed a bit too much. How can there be so much? Jiang Fei still has to pay taxes. In the end, it would be good if there is about 800 million left in his hands. Looking at Feng Yinshun and AI Xiaoxi's dumbfounded expressions, Daliana also laughed. Sigh, this evil American tax. Hearing that nearly half of the tax would be paid, AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yinshun were stunned for a moment, then sighed, as if the $700 million were taken out from their pockets. But in any case, they had a preliminary understanding of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai was very rich, very rich. His wealth was even beyond their imagination. The two women who originally had some thoughts about Jiang Hai didn't know how to face him at this time. It was not easy to make up their minds. They originally thought that the least benefit was money, but it turned out to be so much. Because they knew that Jiang Hai was busy with such a big business, the two women decided not to disturb Jiang Hai. Instead, they went straight to the winery because they were going to shoot here today. In order to avoid being seen by others, Jiang Hai deliberately gave Dulgerard and the others a day off today. Everyone had a rest. Now the grapes were only in the growing period, so they didn't have to look at them all day long. In the morning, after the two people in charge came to take a look, Dulgerard and O'Connor Murphy, this pair of master and disciple, went to town. It was said that they went to Scheich Clive's house as guests. Of course, they knew very well what could be said and what could not. They naturally also knew that Clive's eldest daughter was interested in Jiang Hai, so they wouldn't say anything else. After all, he was their boss. When Feng Yinshun and AI Xiaoxi arrived at the winery, there was already a girl waiting for them there. This girl was none other than Aphrodite Arnold. Last night, after Delina and Marion found out that they were going to help today, they were worried that they wouldn't be able to do a good job, so they specially called Aphrodite at night. In fact, since the day Jiang Hai took Feng Yinshun and AI Xiaoxi around the winery, Aphrodite's woman's sixth sense told her that these two women must be related to Jiang Hai. Sure enough, when she asked yesterday, Delina and Mary also said that these two women should have had sex with Jiang Hai. Aphrodite was not jealous. After learning about this matter, Delina and Mary, Aphrodite, these two women's. After learning about this matter, Delina and Mary's Aphrodite was that these two women and Jiang. However, she was a little envious. She envied them for being able to do something with Jiang Hai. This was what she dreamed of. So when she heard that Delina and Marion needed her help, she immediately came over. When she saw Feng Yinshun and AI Xiaoxi up close, she couldn't help but secretly compare them. The skin of Asians is indeed better than that of Westerners. Their pores are smaller, their limbs are slender, giving people a sense of protection. Although it doesn't conform to the aesthetic view of the Americans still prioritize fat. Thinking about the famous American socialite, nicknamed sister-in-law, Kim Kardashian, she understood that the Americans' aesthetic is indeed different from that of Huaxia. Looking at herself, Aphrodite is actually not bad. However, her limbs are indeed much thicker than these two women, but her certain parts are also much more developed than these two women. Feng Yinshun and AI Xiaoxi naturally felt Aphrodite's gaze, but they didn't say anything. Soon, the five of them entered into work mode and began to take photos. At this time, Jiang Hai was at the cowshed, looking at Zhang Dihai, who just finished picking out the cows from the cowshed. I have to admit, your cows are the least smelly ones I've ever seen. While taking off his mask, Zhang Dihai said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai shrugged. There's no way he can tell the secret. I've picked 200 cows. This is the first batch. If the market's response is good, I'll come back to pick the second batch within this month. But looking at your cows, I think the 2,000 cows I asked for may be a bit too little. Looking at Jiang Hai, old Zhang sighed. It seems that he was really too careful in the beginning. If he directly bought all the cows, TSK. Let's wait until next year. This year's cows won't sell well, I'm going to raise more next year." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled. Indeed, although Jiang Hai's most important cheat is the scales on his body, ever since he rose to level 2, he also has some confidence. Fishing for treasures in the deep sea is actually more profitable than raising cows, but he won't forget that there are also risks. Compared to fishing for treasures, it's more convenient to raise cows. The most important thing is to ensure a stable harvest. "Oh, how many more do you want to raise?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, old Zhang's eyes lit up. "I'll raise about 5,000 more. Right now, the manor has sold more than 10,000 bulls, and there are still more than 8,000 cows left. In the past few months, the cows have given birth to about 2,000 calves. If I raise another 5,000 bulls, I'll have a total of 25,000. Next year, there will be 17,000 bulls ready for slaughter. That's not bad." Hearing old Zhang's words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. Increasing the number of beef cows by 70% is indeed a lot. Originally, according to Luo Binxi's words, they still want to maintain the status quo. After all, this pasture is not that big. With more than 20,000 acres of land, it's more than enough to raise more than 20,000 cows. If it wasn't because Jiang Hai's grass has spiritual energy, it grows very fast, and there's no need to change fields, it would be more troublesome to raise them. However, it's also because Jiang Hai's pasture has spiritual energy, so Jiang Hai can raise twice as many cows as before. Jiang Hai's pasture has about 40,000 cows. Now he can raise 80,000 cows. However, 80,000 cows will require more manpower and more cow sheets. Jiang Hai doesn't want his living area to smell like cow dung. He had come here mainly to enjoy himself, not to smell the stench. Only a little more, 5,000 cows. Maybe I can eat it all by myself next year. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, old Zhang couldn't help but laugh. He has great confidence in Jiang Hai's beef. While the two of them were chatting and laughing, the workers on the other side had also picked out 200 bulls and drove them into the trailer. With an order, Jiang Hai also drove a car with Luo Binxi and Berkdaler following the big truck in front of them out of the manor. Now, they're going to the slaughterhouse. Although Jiang Hai sells whole cows, live cows, he doesn't sell them at the price of a whole cow. After all, a whole cow can't be sold at a high price. After all, the buyer has to bear the risk. If there's no marbling after a cut, they will suffer a great loss. Jiang Hai sells the meat directly. The quality of the meat is different, so the price is different. In this way, Jiang Hai takes a lot of risk, but he has confidence in his cows, so they need to follow him to the slaughterhouse to calculate all the prices. This time, Old Zhang Slaughterhouse was located in the suburbs of Boston. This slaughterhouse could be considered as the largest slaughterhouse in the Boston area. This slaughterhouse occupied the largest area, with a total of more than 800 workers and 120 workshops for slaughtering. Not only did they slaughter cows, pigs, sheep, and other livestock, but they also had more than 100 professional workers for slaughtering cows. Jiang Hai also knew about this company before. When they arrived, they found that there are already a lot of cars outside, waiting to be slaughtered. Many of them are companies that Jiang Hai is familiar with, such as Cartwright Company. This company, which has a grudge against him, lost a lot of face after this New York beef show. They didn't have anything to do with the top 3, which has caused a lot of impact on their business. Many private manor owners had given up on working with them, and many Western restaurants no longer use their cows. Originally, this competition didn't have such a big impact on them. The most important thing is that after the competition, some people inquired about the sales of Jiang Hai's beef. After knowing that Jiang Hai doesn't only sell beef, those Western restaurants still want to buy their beef. But at the same time, Zhang Dihai's Haishang Supermarket and Prowalton's Walmart announced that they got authorization. Since this kind of beef is also sold, they don't need to buy Cartwright Company's beef. Now, when they look at Jiang Hai's beef in front of them, which is more than one size bigger than their own, these companies have no other choice but to sigh helplessly. The only thing that comforts them is that Jiang Hai doesn't raise a lot of cows. More than 10,000 cows, which is a few million pounds of meat, will be divided into a year's sales. Although the top of the food industry in the United States can't be protected, the middle and bottom are still under their control. Mr. Zhang has already informed them a long time ago. When the cars carrying the cows arrived at the gate, there are already people here to meet them. Then the cows are sent to the slaughterhouse, and the next step is to slaughter them. Although they were not slaughtered by machines, these people's handiwork was very fast. If 5 people killed 1 cow, 100 workers could kill 20 cows in an instant. After killing the cows, the machines and other workers would be responsible for cutting the cows. In about half an hour, they could finish a round of slaughter. Then, Jiang Hai's people and Old Zhang's people would work together to calculate the quality and price of the beef produced in each section. When the cows are slaughtered, the exclamations didn't stop. Almost every time the cow's skin is peeled, the workers here will subconsciously exclaim, "The quality of the beef is really good." Chapter 349. I feel more and more that the beef I ordered is too little. Are your cows for sale? Looking at the forms sent by his subordinates from time to time, Elder Zhang's side became more obvious. He couldn't help but glance at Jiang Hai next to him and said, half-jokingly, he knew that people who sold cattle would almost never sell cows. Breeding cattle would change every 1 or 2 years, but cows would not. Because a cow can give birth to 7 to 10 children in a lifetime. That is to say, 1 cow can be exchanged for 10 cows. Although cows that have given birth to 10 children have no value to be sold, most manor owners will kill them for meat or raise them until they are old. People like Jiang Hai will probably raise them until they are old. After all, they have contributed to the manor. However, before the cows give birth to 10 children, Jiang Hai will not agree to sell robins. Most importantly, Jiang Hai isn't stupid. These heifers are eating his grass. When the time comes, the quality of the calves they give birth to will be higher. So when he heard Jiang Hai's words, he just smiled. Elder Zhang naturally understands this. This sentence is just a joke. According to the written on the form, Jiang Hai and Elder Zhang also calculated the price of these cows in their hearts. Although these cows have been reared for more than a month, their quality was indeed slightly worse than when they were at the exhibition. If Jiang Hai's cow at the exhibition is worth more than $160,000, then the price of this cow is basically between $140,000 and $150,000. The middle value is about $147,000 per cow. Jiang Hai is quite satisfied with this price, and Elder Zhang is even more satisfied. There are many rich Chinese in the United States. Although they prefer to save money, if they have good things, they will not be stingy, especially when it comes to food. Huaxia has a long history of 5,000 years. In fact, most of the main achievements are focused on food. Every dynasty will have a kind of representative food. Most Huaxia people are actually quite willing to eat delicious food. After Elder Zhang released that he has the best beef in the world, most of the first batch of beef has been ordered. Now looking at these things, he is really emotional. This time he really made a lot of money. Putting away the report in front of him, Elder Zhang was a little speechless. And Jiang Hai listened to his words, chuckled, and said with a smile, same. Indeed, he made a lot of money this time. The best quality beef he got from Jiang Hai was $400 per pound, and he sold it for at least $480. After deducting the transportation and other miscellaneous expenses, he paid at least $75 per pound of beef. There are 200 cows here, and each of them is 100 kilograms, which is more than 40,000 pounds. 75 multiplied by 40,000, he made more than $3 million in the first batch of beef. What is there to be dissatisfied with? It should be known that the net profit of Xishang Supermarket is only tens of millions a year, and this is equal to the sales of a month. Most importantly, there are still 1,800 cows. Selling 2,000 cows this year, that is more than $30 million, not including the price of other meat. Just the top quality beef is more than 30 million net profit. Elder Zhang still feels that he ordered too little. As more and more cows are killed, the smiles on Jiang Hai and Elder Zhang's faces become more and more obvious. Just like Jiang Hai said, earning money together was the most important thing. Everyone earning money together was the way to go in the long run. While Jiang Hai is making a lot of money here, time is also passing by. If he could kill 20 cows in half an hour, it would only take him 5 hours to kill 200 cows, and that was including the time he would take for lunch. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the 200 cows are all slaughtered. Elder Zhang took away the beef, and Zhang Hai sold the hides directly to the slaughterhouse. These slaughterhouses have the connections of shell companies, so they could be sold directly. Moreover, the quality of Zhang Hai's beef is indeed quite good. Just for the hides, the boss of the slaughterhouse gave Zhang Hai $6 million, which is $800 per hide. This is already quite good, and is the same price as the best quality hides. But for Zhang Hai, $6 million is just a drop in the ocean. He will take it if it's given, and he won't care too much if it's not given. Since he can sell it now, he won't hold back. But if there's one thing that Zhang Hai feels is a pity, it's that the cows went into the water. To be honest, in Zhang Hai's eyes, the cow's water is good, but it's a pity that foreigners don't eat cow's water except for foie gras. So these things can only be thrown away to benefit the rats and wild dogs. After all the meat is loaded into the truck, Elder Zhang didn't say much to Zhang Hai and directly transferred the full payment of the 200 cows to Zhang Hai. The average price of the 200 cows is $147,842. $7. Zhang Hai erased the 42. 7. So it's $147,800 per cow. The 200 cows alone are $56 million. Although it doesn't exceed $100 million, don't forget that this is only the first batch. And Elder Zhang didn't take most of it. According to Prawalton, the first batch of meat she took in 2 days is 1,000 cows, so the price will definitely exceed $100 million. Zhang Hai is quite satisfied with the beef business. According to Huaxia's rules, the business is done. Naturally, they have to have a meal. Zhang Hai doesn't treat Feng Yunshen and AI Xiaoxi as outsiders, so he called them and told them to make the food themselves. He followed Elder Zhang to his house for a drink, along with Robbins. Burke Dollar returned to the manor first to tell everyone the good news. Because in addition to making money for himself, Zhang Hai didn't let his workers suffer losses this time. Including the money from selling the hides, Zhang Hai earned a total of $36 million. He took $30 million and the extra $36 million was divided equally among the 5 cowboys. This way, each person can get $272,000. For the cowboys, this is a huge sum of money. Burke Dollar was ready to go back and tell everyone about it. This is also to calm these people down. Working for Zhang Hai, it is necessary to make money. When the news came back to the manor, some of the cowboys who were envious of the fishermen's money instantly calmed down. This time, it is the fishermen's turn to be envious of them. But whether they're fishermen or cowboys, they all know that as long as they work for Zhang Hai will not forget them. Among other things, they will definitely make more money than before. While the whole manor is celebrating, Zhang Hai is going to Elder Zhang's house for a drink. On the other side, AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshen also finished their photo shoot for the day. When Burke Dollar came back, they couldn't help but be shocked by the news. First, they were shocked that Zhang Hai's business is really so big. More than $30 million, which is close to $200 million. In just one day, Zhang Hai earned $200 million. The rich people in this world really don't take money seriously. Another shocking thing is that Zhang Hai is too good to these workers. He gave each of them $272,000 in dividends from the cattle. My God, $272,000, which is $77 million. Thinking about the money they worked so hard to earn, Feng Yunshen and AI Xiaoxi really have the impulse to agree with Zhang Hai's idea. But even if they want to agree, they have to wait for Zhang Hai to come back. Now, they have to think about what to eat for dinner. But fortunately, Aphrodite, who helped them today, took the initiative to say that she can help them prepare dinner after knowing that they have nothing to eat. This also made them very grateful. So after everyone packed up their things, they walked in the direction of the villa together. Unknowingly, Delina and Marion walked to the front, while Aphrodite deliberately walked behind with AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshen. The two girls looked at Aphrodite and knew that Aphrodite must have something to talk to them about. I want to trouble you with something. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Aphrodite to deliberately say to the two girls. Because Aphrodite spoke very slowly, the two girls could still understand. Say it. We'll see if we can help. After all, this girl helped them today and even wanted to cook for them. So Feng Yinshan couldn't say anything. She smiled and looked at Aphrodite. I know that you have already done that with the boss. I don't have any other intentions. I just support the boss in doing this. Sai, that's not right. Anyway, I want to give myself to the boss. I also want to do the same thing as the boss, but the boss always ignores me, so I want to trouble you. Can you teach me how to do it? Aphrodite's face couldn't help but redden as she stuttered her words. Strictly speaking, they should be love rivals, right? Asking her love rival for advice was indeed a little hard to say, but Aphrodite was already a little desperate and desperate. What? Hearing Aphrodite's words, Feng Yinshan and AI Xiaoxi on the other side were also stunned. Can this be done? The two girls looked at each other. Then AI Xiaoxi seemed to have thought of something. She blushed and looked to the side. She didn't comment on this matter. On the other hand, Feng Yinshan looked at Aphrodite speechlessly. This kind of thing works? Do you think you're filming a melodramatic TV series? Cough. My situation was different from yours. I used to have a hard time. It was the boss who saved me, gave me a job, gave me a new life, and cured my throat. To me, the boss is my everything, so... Looking at Feng Yinshan's puzzled gaze, Aphrodite didn't know how to explain and could only speak slowly. If you want to make Jiang Hai fall in love with you, then I'm sorry. I can't help because he doesn't love me. But if you just want to do that with Jiang Hai, it's easy. Aphrodite took a few deep breaths, calmed her mind, and said hesitantly, I don't expect the boss to fall in love with me. How could the boss fall in love with me? I just want to do that with him. Hearing Zhang Yunshin's words, Aphrodite immediately said. To her, that was enough. Chapter 350. Boss, be careful. Looking at Jiang Hai, who was walking towards his villa, Luo Binci couldn't help but worry. No, it's okay. Don't worry. I parked the car. You can go back. Don't forget, we still have mountain lions. Be careful when you leave. Waving to Luo Binci, Jiang Hai said with a strong spirit. The boss is really, he doesn't refuse anyone. But the boss can really drink. He can still go home in this situation. Amazing. Looking at Jiang Hai's swaying figure, Luo Binci, who was in the car, couldn't help but smile. After parking the car, he walked towards his villa, and Jiang Hai had already returned to his villa. As soon as he returned to the villa, Jiang Hai, who seemed to be able to walk, suddenly felt dizzy and almost fell. But fortunately, his skills were there. Even if his reaction was slow because of drinking, he still tenaciously supported himself with his hand. He didn't fall completely, but his hand hurt a little. Then he patted his head and went back to the sofa in the living room in a daze. He fell there helplessly. Today was the day Jiang Hai sold cattle. After selling the cattle, he got more than 30 million. Jiang Hai was very happy, to be honest. After all, this was the first time the manor was officially profitable. Then, in order to celebrate this matter, Elder Zhang couldn't help but propose to go to his place for a drink. Jiang Hai naturally wouldn't refuse. After all, the conversation between Huaxia people was more about the dinner table. Originally, he thought that an old man couldn't outdrink him. But later, Jiang Hai found that he was thinking too much. Indeed, the old man couldn't outdrink him, but it didn't mean that he wouldn't ask for outside help, such as his eldest son and second son. Now, most of his store's matters were handed over to his eldest son to handle. Today was such a big event, so his eldest son naturally came. At the same time, his second son also came. Because Jiang Hai was the main guest, and someone had to drive, Jiang Hai didn't let Luo Binci drink. He thought that with his physical fitness twice that of a human, how could he not take down 3 people? As it turned out, he was indeed overthinking things. If it was a fight, not to mention the 3 of them, even if there were 3 or 30 of them, they still might not be Jiang Hai's match. However, when it came to drinking, one had to rely on one's innate ability to drink. Jiang Hai's alcohol tolerance was average. He could drink half a liter of white wine and 8 bottles of beer. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't too little either. He could drink a little, but he couldn't drink a lot. In addition, no one usually accompanied him to drink, and he didn't want to drink, so he didn't practice here. Even if it was twice the amount, Jiang Hai could only drink half a liter of white wine and 16 bottles of beer. That's all. But today, Jiang Hai drank more than that. He drank white wine today, which was also soaked in wine. The wine was the kind he got from old Zhang last time. It was soaked in deer penis, snake, deer blood, ginseng, wolfberry, ganoderma, deer antler, clam, and so on. After soaking in the wine, the degree didn't decrease but increased. This white wine was almost 65 degrees, and it could be used as alcohol if it was higher. Jiang Hai drank almost 2.5 liters today, which was already over the limit, but the 3 people from the Zhang family also fell down. Finally, after saying goodbye to old Zhang's second daughter-in-law, Jiang Hai came back by car. On the way, he had already vomited, but after vomiting, although he no longer felt nauseous, he felt even dizzier. It wasn't easy to make it home, but when he laid down on the sofa, he couldn't take it anymore and let out a few long breaths. Jiang Hai wanted to sleep now, but the problem was that he couldn't. People who drank too much were like this. Although the headache was terrible, they couldn't sleep. Moreover, when he moved, his whole body hurt. After about an hour, Jiang Hai felt that his head was a little clearer. He slowly sat up from the sofa and went to the kitchen to drink a big glass of water. Then, he went to the bathroom and slowly climbed to the second floor. Today, he didn't have the mood or energy to look for Feng Yunshun and AI Xiaoxi, so he went straight to his room. But when he opened the door, he was stunned for a moment because Xiao Bai, Little Huang, Dai Teeth, and Qiu, who were supposed to be sleeping in the room, weren't there. Instead, there was a blonde beauty in sexy pajamas lying on his bed. Jiang Hai fixed his eyes on the person lying on his bed. It was none other than Aphrodite Arnold. What's going on? Did I enter the wrong room? Muttering in a low voice, Jiang Hai glanced at the layout of the room. There was no mistake. This was indeed his home. But why was she sleeping here? You're finally back. Just as Jiang Hai was puzzled, Aphrodite, who had already fallen asleep on the bed, was awakened by the sound of Jiang Hai opening the door. She slowly opened her eyes and gave Jiang Hai a somewhat reproachful look. You're sleeping here? Okay, I'll go sleep in another room. Seeing that Aphrodite had woken up, Jiang Hai smiled apologetically and was about to leave, but before he could, Aphrodite had already jumped off the bed and grabbed Jiang Hai. Don't go. If you leave, I'll have come in vain. Listening to Aphrodite's words, Jiang Hai's originally somewhat confused mind suddenly became clear. A girl dressed like this appeared on your bed in the middle of the night. Who would believe that she didn't have any ulterior motives? Aphrodite, don't make trouble. I still have to go to sleep. You know I can't give you any promises. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai smiled and prepared to go out, his mouth also muttering in a low voice. Who wants your promises? I want you. Looking at Jiang Hai, Aphrodite looked at him with some resentment and didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to resist, directly pulling him down on the bed. Jiang Hai also didn't notice for a moment. When he reacted, he was already lying on the bed. Before he could get up, Aphrodite had already straddled Jiang Hai's body, her beautiful face instantly in front of Jiang Hai, nose to nose. You drank. At such a close distance, the smell of alcohol from Jiang Hai's mouth also rushed into Aphrodite's nose. This caused Aphrodite to frown slightly, and Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little apologetic. So let's forget about it. Looking at Aphrodite, Jiang Hai struggled to sit up, but was instantly pushed back on the bed by Aphrodite. She looked down at Jiang Hai condescendingly and threw the only jacket on her body to the side. If you drank, then so be it. I don't know if there will be a chance like today in the future, but no matter what, it doesn't matter if your mouth is full of alcohol or the smell of sweat. I just want you to feel me. It's that simple. Looking at Jiang Hai, Aphrodite finished taking off her jacket and began to help Jiang Hai take off his clothes. Who told Jiang Hai to like to wear outdoor sports? Generally speaking, this kind of clothing was very easy to take off. As Aphrodite's voice fell, her hand instantly pulled down Jiang Hai's pants. This instantly scared Jiang Hai to the point that he couldn't help but shiver. Could it be that she was serious? No way. There was a time when he was like this? Don't mess around. Looking at Aphrodite, Jiang Hai's originally somewhat big tongue also became clear. I'm not messing around. Since you drank, then obediently lie down and enjoy it. The rest is my business. After pushing Jiang Hai down again, Aphrodite also lowered her body. In an instant, Jiang Hai no longer had any fighting strength. Perhaps because of the alcohol, Jiang Hai didn't even have the strength to resist. About half an hour later, Aphrodite sat up again. This time, she changed her position and aimed at another place. As she sat down forcefully, although Jiang Hai also felt some pain, it was much better than when he was with AI Xiaoxi. Then, unknowingly, Jiang Hai's waist also began to move. Just like this, another hour later, Aphrodite lay powerlessly on Jiang Hai's chest. At this moment, she was as if she had been fished out of the water, her body covered in sweat. Jiang Hai's forehead also had a lot of sweat. Touching Aphrodite's smooth back, Jiang Hai was somewhat speechless. That should be fine, right? Feeling Aphrodite, Jiang Hai said somewhat apologetically. Actually, when he was sweating, his alcohol had already dissipated a lot. But in that situation just now, he really couldn't say stop. Yes, already 2/3 done. There's one last place left. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Aphrodite also said softly. Then, she slowly stood up and sat down again with her back facing Jiang Hai. Seeing her like this, Jiang Hai was also shocked. One must know, he also hadn't been to that place before. That place, forget it. Pushing Aphrodite's back, Jiang Hai said somewhat worriedly. Don't worry, it's a different feeling from before, but it's also very comfortable. It's not easy to have this kind of opportunity. If I don't give it all to you, I'll also be very troubled. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Aphrodite's head turned slightly and smiled at Jiang Hai. While Jiang Hai was lost in thought, she also sat down heavily. Sure enough, just as she said, it was indeed a different feeling. Feeling Aphrodite's crazed devotion, Jiang Hai didn't know what to say for a moment. His initial fear and thoughts had long since disappeared. Sometimes, men were like this. When they were begging for something, they were like dogs. After they were done, they despised people for being ugly. Now that something had taken over their minds, how could they still care about that? What's more, don't forget that the alcohol Jiang Hai drank tonight was soaked in something that could kill. About half an hour later, Jiang Hai regained the initiative. Since she was like a moth drawn to a flame, and so unhesitatingly threw herself at him, Jiang Hai also couldn't completely avoid her. Since she was already mentally prepared, then he would fulfill her wish. Chapter 351. Seeing Prawalton getting out of the car, Jiang Hai deliberately looked behind her and asked, "You're the only one who came today. What? Do you want to see Selena? Beg me, I'll bring her next time. But speaking of which, your resources here are so good, you don't have to give them to me. It's a pity to leave them here." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton walked over with a smirk and said to Jiang Hai. It could be seen that she is still very open in front of Jiang Hai. "I'm too lazy to care about you. Let's go and pick the cows." Looking at Prawalton, who was only a dozen centimeters away from him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but wave his hand. He can't control this female attacker. It's better to go look at the cows. This is the main problem. Prawalton looked at Jiang Hai's back and curled her lips. Men, they are all lecherous but don't have the guts, including the man in front of her. That's why men are unreliable. But today, she didn't come here to play. She still has business to do. With a wave of her hand, Prawalton led her team to the cow sheet. Their workload today is not small. They have to pick 1,000 cows. Today is the third day after Zhang Dihai, Mr. Zhang, finished picking the cows. Jiang Hai spent the day at home drinking. Of course, Jiang Hai regretted what happened the night before yesterday when he woke up in the morning. But what's the use of regretting? What's done is done. So he can only use half of his spirit energy to make the swelling go down. After that, he awkwardly went downstairs to prepare breakfast for Aphrodite. But when he was eating in the morning, Jiang Hai found that Aphrodite's attitude towards him hasn't changed much. She's still the same as before. Just like she said, she doesn't ask for anything else. She can stay the same as before. She just wants to sleep with Jiang Hai. That's all. Such a distance made Jiang Hai feel both fortunate and pressured. Most of the pressure came from the bottom of his heart. Was he becoming more and more of a jerk? Feng Yunshun and AI Xiaoxi obviously knew about this, but they didn't seem to care. After resting for half a day yesterday, Jiang Hai took pictures of AI Xiaoxi in the bathtub at noon. After that, Jiang Hai went to clean up the swimming pool because they still needed to take pictures here. He brushed the swimming pool and put in the seawater. However, because the swimming pool was very big and Jiang Hai didn't want to trouble others, he still did it himself for the whole afternoon. At night, Aphrodite did not come. It was still Feng Yunshun and AI Xiaoxi. Jiang Hai found that although it had only been a few days, he seemed to have gotten used to having women around him. What if Feng Yunshun and AI Xiaoxi left? Aphrodite? No, one mistake like that was enough. If there were more, Jiang Hai was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on. With the three of them together, it was naturally another battle. This morning, Jiang Hai's arm was still a little sore. But today, no matter how sore it was, he had to come out. Because today was the day Prawalton came to pull the cows. On the other side, Feng Yunxin and the others had already gone to the swimming pool to shoot. Aphrodite was their chief assistant. Obviously, after that night's experience, the three women had a lot to talk about. However, it was all behind Delina and Marion's back. Now was not the time for them to talk about these things. This made the two girls feel like they were being excluded. Ignoring them, Jiang Hai naturally couldn't choose 1,000 cows as quickly as the day before yesterday. Prawalton obviously wasn't the kind of person who would choose in person like Mr. Zhang, so the two of them chatted in front of the cow sheet. Then Prawalton found that Jiang Hai seemed to know a little about everything, which surprised her. However, Jiang Hai couldn't say that he gained his knowledge after reading a novel. In addition to the love and hatred, there were also some solid facts in the novel, such as astronomy, geography, literature, and so on. It was indeed very scary. Although the number of cows they picked was 5 times more than Mr. Zhang's, Pula Walton brought a lot of people with him. Before noon, all the cows were picked and loaded. They went to a slaughterhouse that was bigger than Mr. Zhang's last time. The people there had already prepared to slaughter the cows overnight, then load them up and transport them to the world. Yes, Prawalton was not as stingy as Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang still had some stores in the United States. However, it was not possible in Europe, unlike Prawalton, who had stores all over the world. Of course, Jiang Hai couldn't send meat to every country. He mainly operated in the United States and Europe. Oceania was more self-sufficient, and no one bought meat from Africa. In Asia, whether it was Japan or Korea, they all had their own livestock. One could be said to be the current #1 in the world, while the other could be said to have always thought of himself as the #1 in the world. Ordinary American beef could be sent in, but it was a big problem to send in such high-grade beef. As for the biggest market, Huaxia, First, Chile was there. Second, Huaxia didn't allow the import of American beef for sale. This was also a kind of protection for local beef. Otherwise, with the price of American beef, Huaxia's livestock might have gone bankrupt long ago. This time, Jiang Hai didn't keep watch. He came back after 8 o'clock in the evening. He left Robbins Garcia and Bert Dollar there to watch. With the $270,000 that Jiang Hai had rewarded them, the cowboys were all very enthusiastic. Now, the cowboys in the manor seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Even Bell made an extra round of patrols during his usual days. Because the cows used to belong to Jiang Hai, they now had a close relationship with him. They didn't come back until noon the next day with a pile of reports. Then, Jiang Hai and Prawalton made a phone call. After the call, $151 million was transferred into Jiang Hai's account. $147 million was Cow's money, and the $4 million was Cow's hide money. Jiang Hai really didn't think that Cow's hide would be so valuable. This time, Jiang Hai didn't give a bonus. After all, the money was his. However, Robbins Burke and Burke gave him $10,000 each. This was the money for overtime. The boss who paid the most overtime in the world was probably Jiang Hai. After putting all the money into his American Express black card, Jiang Hai left with Feng Yinshan and AI Xiaoxi. Now, they were going to take photos of the plane. Of course, this time, Jiang Hai was just a driver. Recently, they had been getting along well with Aphrodite. She had already taken his job. Jiang Hai didn't care about this. It was good to save him some trouble. Today, he had already greeted Belle and Mullen Rupert. When they drove to the small airport, Belle and Mullen Rupert immediately came out. They were cleaning the hangar just now. Otherwise, although there was a plane, the effect wouldn't be very good. Thank you for your hard work. Go in and take photos. Nodding to the two, Jiang Hai said with a smile. People say that people are in high spirits when they are happy. Now that Jiang Hai was making money and happy, he had no reason to be sad. Boss, it's almost done. You can go take a look. We'll go back first. Seeing Jiang Hai and the others walking over, Belle chuckled and said to Jiang Hai, because Jiang Hai gave them half a day off in the afternoon, they can drink in the villa or go to the town and have fun. After all, young people like Belle are still in high demand. They can't only rely on little left and little right. Especially the most important thing, Jiang Hai just gave him a large sum of money. He now feels like something is scratching his heart, and he can't wait to leave. Hey, Belle, don't be in a hurry to leave. But just as he was about to leave, Jiang Hai suddenly stopped him. Is there anything else? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Belle couldn't help but stop and ask with some doubts. You guys go ahead. I have a few words to say to Belle. Seeing that not only Belle stopped, but even Feng Yinshan and Daliana also stopped, Jiang Hai said to them first, then walked to Belle's side. Belle, your boss is now considered to have some assets. As the old saying goes, don't be afraid of thieves stealing, but be afraid of thieves thinking about you. You came from a triangle state. Do you know any reliable people who can protect me? Looking at Belle, Jiang Hai asked him in a low voice. In his opinion, finding a bodyguard is not a glorious thing. Yes, me. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Belle couldn't help but nod, then patted himself happily. He has such confidence. When it comes to these skills, he is definitely world-class. I know you are good, but you can keep an eye on me 24 hours a day. Besides, you also have to fly a plane and herd cattle. I mean professional. Glancing at Belle, Jiang Hai knew that this guy is not serious. So he couldn't help but be a little serious. Oh, boss, to be honest, if you want to find some soldiers, I have a lot of ways, but soldiers are more obedient to the government. If you want to find some people who can protect your safety and are loyal to you, even in the Triangle State, there are no such people, and I don't have any friends. Think about it. If I had a friend, I wouldn't have been kicked out. As far as I know, in the entire Triangle State, I am the only freak. Hearing Jiang Hai's serious words, Belle shrugged helplessly. It's not that he doesn't want to introduce people to Jiang Hai, but he really doesn't know who to introduce. Look at what you're doing. But this isn't the way to go. I need to have some guards around me. Jiang Hai listened to Belle's words and couldn't help but scratch his head. This guy is really unlucky, but thinking about his own assets, he can't rest assured if he doesn't hire a few people. Boss, it's a bit difficult for you to find people who are completely trustworthy, but I know a place where the bodyguards are very good. Chapter 352. Los Angeles, California. It was the second largest city in the United States, the city of angels, and the holy land of celebrities. Besides San Francisco, it was also the second largest Chinese city in the United States. A large part of the Chinese in the United States were actually Huaxia workers brought over during the development of the western part of the United States. Although they came to this foreign country as pigs, they were treated as pigs. Although they suffered from the supercilious looks of the Americans and the unequal racial policies, they still survived tenaciously. They became the third largest force in the United States. Besides the white and black people, the Huaxia people were the most numerous. Unlike some people in China who would attack the Chinese from time to time, most of the Chinese in the United States were very united. Of course, there were some regional differences, like the North and the South. However, under the oppression of the black and white forces, the Chinese knew that they were intimately interdependent. Some people in China thought that since these people had become American citizens, they were no longer the people of the imperial court. Indeed, These people were not the imperial court's people now, but they were all descendants of the Yellow Emperor. Since they were from the same clan, they preferred to take care of business with Chinese people. For example, Zhang Dihai's Haishang supermarket was not qualified to be compared with Walmart and other large supermarkets in terms of variety and price. However, their business had always been good, because compared to those large supermarkets, the Chinese people were more used to buying things here. Just like today, as soon as Mr. Zhang's family opened their store in Los Angeles, some elderly people and housewives walked into the supermarket with baskets in their hands to pick out the fresh vegetables they needed today. However, after walking in, almost everyone saw a newly opened area. Zhang Xian's display cabinet was much smaller than other places. At the same time, it was also much more luxurious. When people walked into the shop, they would see it. This made many people curious and walked over to take a look. In the end, they found that it was selling beef. The Haishang supermarket originally sold beef, and the price was about the same as Walmart. However, when they saw the beef on this day, many of them laughed or bit their tongues. In any case, most of them walked away silently, because in their opinion, this store was crazy because the price of the beef was really a bit too much. Old Lou, is your store going to close down? Doing such a one-off business? What kind of beef is this? You can ascend to immortality after eating it. Why is it so expensive? Of course, not everyone was silent. Among them, there was a man who spoke Shu Mandarin. He picked up a piece of beef that weighed about 1 pound and said with a mocking expression, "The price of the beef at this time was indeed a bit too much. A pound of beef was $450. Old Zhang, don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. Look at that beef. Is it ordinary beef?" Hearing his words, a middle-aged man behind the counter with a store manager logo on his chest couldn't help but speak. His eyes were full of contempt. "Isn't it just beef? Why, can I really ascend to immortality after eating it?" Hearing Old Lou's words, the man called Old Zhang couldn't help but hesitate. He carefully looked at it and found that it was indeed just beef, nothing special. "I said you don't understand, and you really don't understand. Aren't you a restaurant owner? This is the best kind of beef in the special grade A beef. Do you know the Japanese Wagyu? The best Wagyu is grade 5A, and this is grade 5A. This is the best beef that can be sold in the world at present." Hearing his words, Lou couldn't help showing off. He didn't expect that when he heard the price of the meat yesterday, he was actually more shocked than the others. The price was crazy. However, the boss of Haishang's supermarket, Zhang Dihai, gave each store 5 caddies of meat for them to eat in order to dispel these people's concerns. Last night, they had eaten the beef. The beef made with their terrible skills almost made them swallow their tongues. Since then, Old Lou had been the most loyal supporter of this kind of beef. Unfortunately, this kind of beef was really not something he could afford to eat. Is it that good? No matter how good the beef is, isn't it still beef? Although he was a little confused by Old Lou's mysterious idea, Old Zhang was still very stubborn. He looked at the piece of beef curiously. Indeed, the layout of the marbled pattern on the beef was very beautiful, but this thing was not that amazing after it was made. It was not that magical. "How about this? If you want to buy it, I'll give you a 20% discount, but it's only one piece. Go back and have a good taste. If it's not good, come and find me. I'll give you a refund." Looking at Old Zhang, Old Lou smiled. He knew that Old Zhang was the owner of a famous Sichuan restaurant nearby. In the world, wherever there were Chinese people, there would be Chinese restaurants. Although these restaurants had been modified to cater to the local taste, they were completely unrecognizable. However, there are also some families who specialized in some traditional Huaxia dishes, specially prepared for Huaxia people and foreigners who like to eat this kind of food. Lou's family opened such a Sichuan restaurant. According to legend, Old Lou's ancestor was once a special chef. However, everyone knew that although Sichuan cuisine was popular all over the country, there was no Sichuan cuisine in the Manchu Han Imperial Banquet. Not even a single dish. Therefore, the special chef of Sichuan cuisine didn't have a good life during the late Qing dynasty. Later, his family came to the United States and opened a restaurant here. There was no need to talk about his skills. Therefore, after so many years of operation, this restaurant had become one of the largest restaurants in Huaxia City. Many Huaxia people would choose to eat here. Naturally, the price of the food here was not ordinary. Although he had made a lot of money and did not lack that money, he was still a little tempted by the $450 a pound of beef. Now that he heard old Lu's words, he hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth. Out of his trust in old Lu, as well as the solemn look on his face, old Zhang bought a piece and prepared to try it himself. After buying the beef and other ingredients, he returned to the kitchen. It was still early in the morning. The land of Sichuan was known as the most leisurely place. The people here liked to sleep in, drink tea, and play mahjong. Most of the people in his restaurant were also from Sichuan, especially the kitchen. People from other places could not make the unique spicy food of that place. When he arrived at the kitchen, Zhang began to prepare. This pound of beef was more than 9 taels. At most, he could make 2 dishes. He was going to make a cold dish and a hot dish. For the cold dish, he was going to make husband and wife lung slice. And for the hot dish, he was going to make steamed beef. Although he knew that the best beef was eaten raw and made into steak, he always felt that no matter what the dish was, the original taste of the Chinese cuisine could be maximized. To put it simply, if he was willing, who could stop him? Husband and wife lung slice was a snack developed in Sichuan at the end of the Qing dynasty. The main ingredient was naturally not beef. The main ingredients were beef tongue, beef heart, tripe, and scalp. But nowadays, the beef was more expensive than the beef. In addition, it was not easy to clean up, so basically, the husband and wife lung slice was made with beef. First, the beef was cut into thin slices, then seasoned with spices, salt, and pepper, a specialty of Sichuan, and braised it. After the fierce fire was brought to a boil, he turned the fire to a small one and stewed the meat. Then he took it out to dry. After that, he put some celery and cooked peanuts together. Then he added in the marinade soybean oil, MSG, huaxiang noodles, chili noodles, and sesame seeds. It was not too difficult and was a very delicious cold dish. As for steamed beef, it was not too difficult. After removing the tendons, cut the beef into slices, put in Pixian bean strips, soy sauce, vegetable oil, soy sauce, ginger, rice, and glutinous rice. After steaming it over a strong fire for 30 minutes, it was ready to eat. Of course, some chili powder, pepper powder, chopped green onions, garlic, and coriander could also be added. These 2 dishes were very home-cooked dishes. For old Zhang, he could cook these 2 dishes well with his eyes closed. However, he was very careful today because his ingredients were too expensive. When he took the beef out of the box, he was stunned for a moment. Usually, good beef would have some rank odor on it. But this beef, other than some fragrance, there was almost no rank odor. Then, when he cut it, he realized that the beef did not have any tendons at all. There was not even the slightest bit of tendons. However, the meat was very firm, which surprised him. It seemed that there was a reason why this beef was so expensive. Then, he prepared to make the husband and wife lung slice first, because it would take some time to dry it. However, when he put the beef and the seasoning into the big pot, the flavor of the seasoning would usually overpower the beef. But this time, the flavor of the beef suddenly rushed into his nose. He suddenly understood that with this smell, the price of this piece of beef was not considered expensive. And when he finished cooking the 2 dishes and took them out to enjoy, his eyes suddenly lit up. The next day, when old Lu opened the door of his shop, he found old Zhang standing in front of his shop with bloodshot eyes. "What's the situation? Did your wife chase you out?" Old Lu said in surprise when he saw old Zhang's appearance. However, old Zhang did not answer him as usual. Instead, he pushed him aside and ran to the area. In fact, he was not chased out by his wife. He had been standing here for half the night. He was waiting for that beef. Chapter 353. Beau Boss. At this time, in a villa near Long Island in New York, a woman in an office lady's uniform ran in anxiously with a stack of papers in her hand. Don't panic. Looking at her, a naked woman in black gauze pajamas in the living room of the villa couldn't help but speak softly. There were several other women beside this woman. These women were either black, white, or yellow-skinned, but they all had one thing in common, which was that their clothes were really simple. Some of their key parts were not covered by clothes. At this time, these women were like kittens surrounding the woman in black gauze. One of them was feeding her wine, while the other was feeding her fruit. However, they were not using their hands, but their mouths. The other women were either sniffing her arms or legs. There were even 2 women who were licking the woman's legs. This scene really made people speechless. Seeing this scene, the office lady who ran and didn't care. Obviously, this wasn't the first time she had seen this scene. She stopped in front of the woman, took 2 deep breaths, and handed over the stack of papers. Seeing the papers, the woman waved her hand gently. The girls around her all left her side and stood in a row behind her, standing there respectfully. The woman took the stack of papers and looked at it. The more she looked, the wider the smile on her face. Hey, 80% of the sales in 3 days. It seems that my choice is really right. I don't have to worry about the sales of these beef. She put the stack of reports on the table and pulled a beauty behind her. The woman kissed her heavily. After a few minutes, she let go of her, who was faintly out of breath. Boss is really farsighted. Should we kill the remaining 9,000 beef as soon as possible? Looking at the woman's appearance, the OL also smiled. Indeed, this time, the company made a lot of money. The remaining? Don't worry. Let them wait. Do you know why the fruit company is so popular? Hearing the OL's words, the woman spoke unhurriedly with a different light in her eyes. Hunger marketing. Looking at the woman's expression, the office lady understood and said with a smile, "Yes, so let them wait." Seeing that the office lady understood, the woman smiled. As for the other side, in a villa in Boston, an old man also saw a report similar to the previous one, but the difference was that this report said that all the beef he imported had been sold out. "Dad, our profit in 3 days has reached more than 3 million. Sure enough, Dad's vision was right. In front of the old man, a man dressed in a suit and leather shoes said with a smile, "After all, these cows were only 1/10 of the previous batch. If they killed all these cows, they would not only make 3 million this time, but also 30 million. 30 million. That would double his annual turnover. How could he not be tempted by it? Don't worry. If Walmart doesn't do anything, we won't do anything either." However, the old man did not agree to his proposal. The old man just shook his head and looked at the report in front of him. The middle-aged man thought for a while and understood. "Yes, Dad, I understand." Looking at the old man, the middle-aged man smiled. His smile was quite gratified. Yes, at this time, these 2 people were not strangers. They were Prawalton and Zhang Dihai, who had bought Jiang Hai's beef. Since Jiang Hai's beef went on the market 3 days ago, the response on the first day was really dull. However, on the second day, the sales directly soared more than twice, and 95% of them were repeat customers. Jiang Hai's beef was indeed much better than other ingredients in the world. Even if it was the best beef in Japan, Jiang Hai's beef would definitely crush it. First of all, in terms of appearance, there may not be much difference between the two, but whether it's in terms of taste, texture, or nutrition, Jiang Hai's beef won't have any problem crushing Wagyu. This is because the aura contained in the beef not only makes the beef taste excellent, but most importantly, it's also good for people's health. Such a good thing almost became the first thing in the upper class almost as soon as it was launched. In this world, there were many people who did not lack money, so these people pursued delicious and healthy food. Now, these 2 things were perfectly combined in Jiang Hai's beef. Naturally, it was the best choice. On the first day, maybe most of the people just bought 1 piece of beef with an attitude of trying, but many people directly went back to buy in the afternoon. There were also some people who waited until the next day to buy it. In the end, they found that the original supply was not as much as it was at the beginning. This made these people more anxious. For example, Old Zhang and the others in Los Angeles directly bought more than 10 pieces at one time. These pieces of beef were kept for themselves or given away. When the people who gave away the beef saw that it was new, they would eat it on the same day. After eating it, they would basically call and ask where the beef was bought. In this way, after 3 days, the original stock of the Sishan supermarket was all sold out. The other people who came because of the news only got the answer that the stock was no longer in stock. As for Walmart, although the stock was not completely sold out, 80% of its beef was sold. Those who did not buy it, and those who bought it left their phone numbers to make an appointment for the next batch of beef. Even some Western restaurants saw the business opportunity and wanted to buy the beef. Unfortunately, Shanghai's beef was not enough to sell to the upper class, let alone to these Western restaurants. Although these people were anxious, they could do nothing about it. Even this news was passed to Chi Li, who had been paying attention to Shanghai's beef. At this time, Chi Li's restaurants were almost renovated. In her opinion, they should be able to open in early June. However, she was very worried that Shanghai's beef would be gone by then. She specially called Shanghai and told Shanghai that he must keep his 1,000 cows. Of course, she, who was originally strong, was much weaker this time because she knew that Shanghai was no longer the man she needed to lower her head to see. The current Shanghai, purely in terms of money, was a man she needed to raise her head to see. In 3 days, Shanghai's beef became famous in the upper class. In an instant, it became a wildfire in the upper class. While some people were interested in Shanghai's beef, some people were interested in Shanghai. Among these interests, there were some that had good intentions. Of course, there were also some that had bad intentions towards Shanghai. However, at this time, Shanghai did not know about these. After selling 2 batches of beef, Shanghai was also paying attention to the price of beef and the reaction of the market. However, during the day, he was more with AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yinshan. These 2 people seemed to have gotten used to Shanghai's existence recently. Every day, the 3 of them would fight together. Perhaps they had the idea of smashing a broken jar, so whether it was Feng Yinshan or AI Xiaoxi, they were becoming more and more open. Their fighting positions were also gradually changing. From the bed in the room to the floor, then to the bathroom, the kitchen, the corridor, the stairs, and then gradually changed from indoors to outdoors. The periphery of the forest, the hangar of the airplane, the beach by the sea behind the reef. However, the place where most of the fighting took place was still Shanghai's car. At this time, the 3 of them had just completed a big battle in the car. It was said that the land that could not be plowed was only the exhausted cows. Shanghai now felt that this sentence was not wrong. Even with his physical fitness, which was twice the limit of a human, he felt that he was about to be overwhelmed. As for AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yinshan, these days they were becoming more and more radiant. Their skin was getting better and better, and they were becoming more and more beautiful. They were eating food that contained spiritual energy, enjoying the nourishment of love and Shanghai's additional subsidies. Regardless of whether it was in terms of temperament or figure, these 2 girls had made a qualitative leap. If one was not very familiar with the 2 girls, it would be very difficult to connect them to the 2 girls who had just arrived here a few days ago. At this time, Feng Yinshan and AI Xiaoxi were lying on Shanghai's left and right. The sweat on their bodies had already wet their hair, which was hanging naturally by the side. Their eyes were closed, and there was a trace of a smile on their faces. Okay, we should go back. It's getting late. After sending you guys back, I still have to go fishing for seafood. What do you want to eat tonight? Lobster, wrapped fish, prawns, or sea cucumber, or something else? After about half an hour, when the 3 of them were done being intimate, Shanghai also sat up, his hands naturally resting on the long legs of the 2 women beside him, and asked with a smile, "I want to eat wrapped fish." As soon as she heard Shanghai mention food, AI Xiaoxi was the first to wake up and raise her hand and said, "I want to eat too. You could get a few more." Hearing her words, Feng Yinshan also said with a smile, "Okay, no problem. For the domestic market, wrapped fish is a good thing. But for Shanghai, this kind of thing should be something he has plenty of. I really don't want this kind of life to end." Hearing Shanghai's straightforward words, AI Xiaoxi sighed and said regretfully, "If you don't want to leave, then stay here." Hearing her words, Shanghai also smiled. He really wanted them to stay. Chapter 354. That won't do. We agreed that we will go back. As for your place, when the tourism project is done, we will consider it again. Hearing Shanghai's words, Feng Yinshan and AI Lanqi were slightly moved, But soon Feng Yinshun rejected Jiang Hai's words and said with a smile, "To be honest, in the beginning, Feng Yinshun didn't think about falling in love with Jiang Hai or falling in love with Jiang Hai's life. After all, in her opinion, men are unreliable. She came to Jiang Hai for survival. But after getting along with him for a few days, she found that Jiang Hai was really a good man. Although it wasn't love, she really liked Jiang Hai. She liked this man, she liked this man's attitude, she liked this man's sensibility, she liked this man's life, and most importantly, she liked this manner, and of course this man's money. Jiang Hai seemed to be the most perfect lover in the world, at least in her opinion. However, the unreliable thoughts of the man buried deep in her heart did not allow her to fall so quickly. As for AI Xiaoxi, she was destined not to stay here because she had to go back to take care of her family. If she was really willing to be someone else's lover, she wouldn't have to do this job. Now, she was accompanying Jiang Hai. First, it was because of work. Second, it was because she was willing to do so. This was a beautiful dream, and she should wake up when she returned to China. Looking at the two determined women in front of him, Jiang Hai also knew that he couldn't persuade them. So, except for smiling and nodding, he had nothing to say. For a while, there was only the sound of clothes being put on in the car. Just when the atmosphere between the three was a little awkward, Jiang Hai's cell phone couldn't help but ring. Glancing at the caller, it was none other than Edward Anderson. Jiang Hai also picked it up. "Hello, AI Dahua. Is the boat ready? I'm going to dig some seafood back to eat in a while." Picking up the phone, Jiang Hai said, "The boat has been prepared for a long time, but boss, your plan to dig seafood to eat may have to be pushed back because your yacht is here." Hearing what AI Dahua said, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. At this time, Feng Yinshun and AI Xiaoxi, who were beside Jiang Hai, were also stunned. Yes, the three of them had forgotten about the yacht. Although Jiang Hai wasn't a hero, he had completely forgotten about it for the past few days. Now that he heard that the yacht was here, he looked at Feng Yinshun and AI Xiaoxi. The two girls were stunned. When they had first arrived, Jiang Hai had told them that he had a yacht. However, they had been busy filming and living with Jiang Hai, so they had forgotten about it. Now that they heard about a yacht, they were excited. "Do you want to see it?" Looking at the twinkling eyes of the two women, Jiang Hai asked with a smile. "Of course." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yinshun said immediately, and AI Xiaoxi also looked at Jiang Hai with hope. For such a small proposal, Jiang Hai naturally didn't care. After the three of them put on their clothes, Jiang Hai also got into the driver's seat, stepped on the accelerator, and rushed in the direction of the dock. Before they arrived at the dock, Jiang Hai saw his yacht in the distance. The yacht that earned him more than 1 billion yuan. When Jiang Hai's car arrived at the dock, the yacht was almost there. Looking at the angular and beautiful yacht in front of them, the fishermen on the dock couldn't help but open their mouths wide. Although this boat is not as big as Jiang Hai's fishing boat, the difference between a yacht and a fishing boat is still very big. At least when they look side by side, everyone knows that this yacht is definitely much better than a fishing boat. "Boss, your yacht is so beautiful." Even AI Dahua, a person who has seen many storms and waves, couldn't help but raise his finger to Jiang Hai and said with a serious face. Jiang Hai heard this and smiled. "Can we go up and have a look?" Pulling the corner of Jiang Hai's clothes, AI Xiaoxi saw a yacht for the first time, and such a big one at that. She whispered to Jiang Hai. Her eyes were full of hope. "Of course, let's check in a while, and then tomorrow we will go out and have fun together." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. This is indeed not a difficult thing. And hearing Jiang Hai agree to her request so easily, AI Xiaoxi's face was also full of happiness. If Jiang Hai is really her boyfriend, how good would that be? Just as they were chatting here, the yacht slowly approached the dock. As the yacht was tied up, a few people came down from the yacht. These people were the ones who delivered the yacht. After sailing for so long, these people also looked tired. Jiang Hai was not stingy. First, he went up to the yacht with AI Dahua and the others to check it. After making sure that there were no problems with the instruments, household appliances, the hull, and so on, Jiang Hai signed a receipt and at the same time took out $1,000 as a tip for these people. It was inevitable for these people to receive tips, but they didn't expect Jiang Hai to be so generous. There were a total of 4 people, $1,000, a total of $250 each. Although this week's sailing was very tiring, but the tiredness disappeared. Then Jiang Hai asked Marlon Rupert to take a helicopter to send them to a hotel in town for the night. The money for the night was also paid for by Jiang Hai, but these people had nothing to do with Jiang Hai tomorrow. Whether they went to Boston and took a plane back or something else, it had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. At this time, Jiang Hai was on the yacht with Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yinshan. This was the first time the 2 girls had boarded a yacht. Moreover, it was such a big yacht. To be honest, Jiang Hai found it hard to understand the excitement in their hearts. They were curious about everything, touching everything. They even studied the sofa for a long time. Looking at their appearance, Jiang Hai also knew that they wouldn't be able to leave for a while. So Jiang Hai deliberately sailed the boat out to play with Big Fool and his wife in the sea. After digging a lot of bao, they returned. At this time, although the 2 girls were hungry, they did not want to leave. If they did not see Jiang Hai come back with so many bao, they would have slept on the yacht tonight. But Jiang Hai was not destined to let them sleep on the yacht tonight because the yacht just arrived today, so not only did it need to be repaired, but it also needed to be disinfected. After giving these to Ai Dahua, Jiang Hai took them home. Abalone, not sure if they could be found, was something Jiang Hai said before. It was mainly distributed in the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean. There were not many of them, so Americans and Europeans did not have the habit of eating them. At Jiang Hai's place, the number of abalone was much less than lobsters. But to be exact, that was in the past. Since Jiang Hai came, he had some special intentions to cultivate bao. Of course, he did not buy the seedlings of bao. Instead, he infused some idle spiritual energy into the bigger bao. Originally, Jiang Hai had forgotten about this matter. But after the beginning of spring, Jiang Hai discovered that the number of abalones he caught at the coral reef had increased significantly. The abalones on Jiang Hai's side belonged to the web abalone category. Abalones were mainly divided into imported and domestic abalones. Imported abalone was mainly divided into Australia and Japan. Australia's abalone with green edges, black edges, and net abalone were quite good. The best abalone in Japan was net abalone, followed by G-pin and Mawa. The worst abalone should be from the Middle East. The abalone in Jiang Hai's place was a type of net abalone from Australia and Japan. It could grow very big. The few abalone that Jiang Hai infused spiritual energy in the beginning had almost grown to 1 caddy. Just thinking about 1 caddy of bao was enough to make one panic. But Jiang Hai also treated those abalone as seeds. He would not touch them easily. He only dug the smaller ones at the side. But even if Jiang Hai dug a relatively small one, it was still at least 6 taels in weight. The grade of abalone was calculated by the head. 1 caddy was 605 grams. There were 2 heads, 3 heads, 5 heads, 10 heads, and so on. Jiang Hai's baoyu weighed 6 taels, and the 2 ends of the baoyu weighed 1 ma jin. It was a genuine 2-headed abalone. Tonight, Jiang Hai dug 20 of them. Since they liked to eat, then they would eat. Other things, Jiang Hai did not have much, but there were many delicious things. But that night, Feng Yinshan and Ai Xiaoxi's thoughts were clearly not on these bao. Although the bao was also delicious, to be honest, when they thought of going to the yacht to play yesterday, they were very excited. At night, naturally, they could not sleep. But for those who could not sleep, they still had an entertainment project to play, which was to fight with Jiang Hai. In the end, Jiang Hai did not remember when he fell asleep. He only remembered that he did not have good dreams for the whole night. This also caused some problems in his sleep quality. But fortunately, Jiang Hai's physical fitness was there. He was still in good spirits the next day. Although the yacht itself did not require much control, Jiang Hai still felt that it was more reliable to bring along one more person. If he brought along Feng Yinshan and Ai Xiaoxi, these 2 people did not know how to sail and did not know anything. It would be troublesome. Thus, Jiang Hai thought of Aphrodite. To be honest, after that night, Hai did not know what to do with Aphrodite. But now that he thought of who to bring along, the first person he thought of was still her. Thus, Hai called her. When Aphrodite heard that Hai wanted to bring her out to sea, she naturally did not say anything. She was already in place early the next morning. When everyone was in place, Hai also gave the order. The group of 4 started the yacht and headed for the open sea. Chapter 355. Yes, make her look more charming. Her hands aren't in the way. Hai, help her with it. While fiddling with the camera, Feng Yunshun said to Hai. Hai didn't care about it. He went straight up and helped AI Xiaoxi fix her hair, blocking the part that should be blocked. He didn't want AI Xiaoxi to accidentally leak it. Today's weather's really good. After Hai left, Aphrodite, who had been standing next to them, said with narrowed eyes, "Today's weather's really good. There's almost no wind, an endless sea, and an endless blue sky. There were no clouds in the sky except for the sun, so the whole world seemed to be blue at this time. It's just that in this blue world, Hai's small boat has appeared. After Hai's yacht arrived at his dock yesterday, Edward Anderson and the others checked it at night. After disinfecting the inside and outside of the cabin, Hai took Feng Yinshun, AI Xiaoxi, and Aphrodite out to have fun. After getting on the boat, the 2 girls naturally had to work. However, in the past, they still needed Hai to hold the light shield for them. Today, they didn't need it because the sun was really too bright. The sun was so dazzling that they didn't need to block the light on their faces. Therefore, Hai only became a single assistant, and he only went up to help. After so many days of shooting, Feng Yunshun and AI Xiaoxi had actually gotten used to Hai's presence. When they were shooting, their seductive actions were directed at Hai, which made Hai a little unbearable. If it was a normal day, Hai could only endure it and wait until the shooting was over. But today was different. Seeing that there was something wrong with Hai's loose beach pants, Aphrodite took the initiative to squat down with a smile. Although she and Hai had only done it once, she didn't feel shy and directly helped Hai solve the problem. Listening to the sound of water and the visual impact, Feng Yunshun and AI Xiaoxi, who were filming, could not help but feel speechless. Sometimes, women were actually quite naughty, especially when they were used to tasting sweetness. Looking at Aphra and Hai, AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshun couldn't help but look at them. Hey, it's not good for you to be like this, you know. We're still filming. Looking at Hai and Aphra, Feng Yunshun put her hands on her waist and said with a face full of displeasure, "They are disturbing their filming too much. Are you guys coming? Then I'll leave it to you. I just hope that when the boss needs help, someone can help him at any time. As for who the person is, I don't care." Hearing Feng Yunshun's words, Aphra couldn't help but raise her head and smiled at the 2 girls, then said to them. Hearing Aphra's unreserved words, the 2 girls couldn't help but raise their middle fingers. "Crazy. If you want to do it, go to the cabin. It's not like there are no rooms." Looking at the 2 girls, Feng Yunshun said, "It's not as comfortable as here. I'm almost done, come on." After Aphra replied softly, she took the initiative to lie down on the side of the boat and said to Hai. And Hai also knew that this was not the time to be polite, so he immediately blew the bugle call. Really? Listening to Aphrodite's voice, Feng Yunshun's face turned red as if it was on fire, even though he didn't want to look. As for AI Xiaoxi, her legs were a little weak, but this shooting plan couldn't be disrupted. The battle with Hai will last 2 to 3 hours, and by that time, the best sunlight will have passed. So they must take the photos at this time. So the 2 girls can only rely on their willpower to take the next photos. An hour has passed since the photos were taken. And at this time, Aphra also reached the peak for the 4th time, with Hai's funds, lying on the deck with satisfaction. It's our turn. Seeing Aphra fall down, Feng Yunshun and AI Xiaoxi on the other side also prepare to charge. Wow, I'm so happy. I feel as if I'm in heaven. Look, there's a city on the horizon. That's heaven, huh? How can I see heaven? Aphrodite, who was lying on the ground, slowly murmured softly as she recalled the feeling just now. Suddenly, She opened her eyes and said with some surprise. Hearing her words, the three people who were fighting at this time couldn't help but raise their heads. Sure enough, in their eyes, there is a city in the distant sky. Seeing this, AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yinshun instantly lost interest and looked at the sky with surprise. As for Jiang Hai, he also unconsciously sped up, and after 10 minutes, the funds were injected. Then he lay on the ground with AI Xiaoxi in his arms and looked at the city on the horizon. That's an illusion, the legendary mirage. Looking at the buildings in the distance, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yinxin and the others on the other side all propped up their bodies and pointed at the city on the horizon with a look of surprise. This is a mirage. Wow, this is the first time I've seen it. In fact, it's not only them. Even Afra saw it for the first time, but Jiang Hai has seen it many times. Yeah, it's amazing, right? If you don't want to leave, you can see it whenever you want. Looking at Feng Yinxin and AI Xiaoxi, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. When he saw it for the first time, he was also shocked. But for Edward Anderson and the others, they are already used to such a scene. After telling Jiang Hai about it, Jiang Hai also felt very curious. But later, he got used to it and didn't care about it. Humph! Hearing Jiang Hai's words, AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yinxin couldn't help but roll their eyes at him, then picked up the camera and took pictures. For them, it's really amazing to see this thing. Didn't they say that this thing was formed by the breath of a big mussel under the sea? Let's go and get the big mussel. After taking the pictures, Feng Yinxin said with some emotion. But after listening to her, Jiang Hai was stunned. Who told you that there's a big mussel? Looking at Feng Yinxin, Jiang Hai asked her with a bit of smile. When I was young, it was explained in the idiom books. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yinxin looked at Jiang Hai strangely. That's nonsense. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai was also a bit speechless about Feng Yinxin's knowledge. Big mussel breathing? Well, in fact, this is the original meaning of a mirage. In ancient times, people didn't understand the principle of light reflection, but they also knew that the house in the sky was not real, but an illusion, not a heavenly palace. So, no one knew who said that these illusions were actually illusions formed by the bubbles of the big mussel. The mussel in the mirage referred to the shellfish, and it was precisely because of this that this idiom was created. But modern people have already said that this thing has nothing to do with shellfish. If it's really related to shellfish, then how do you explain the mirage in the desert? There's shellfish on the beach? Stop fooling around. In fact, this is a reflection principle of light. The main reason is that Jiang Hai doesn't understand the main reason, but he knows that it's just a reflection of light. First, it's not real, and second, it has nothing to do with shellfish. Hearing Jiang Hai's explanation, the three girls couldn't help but nod. After all, AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yinxin were also college students or college graduates. They understood these things as soon as they explained it. Although Aphrodite didn't go to college, she still learned the basic education in the welfare house. She can still understand some of the basic scientific explanations. Thinking of this, she can't help but pointed to the other side. The people there are also illusions. Following the direction she pointed, Jiang Hai saw a black boat in the distance. It was rushing towards him at a very fast speed. The water splashing and the hull of the boat scared Jiang Hai. It's not fake, it's real. Quickly put on your clothes and then go into the cabin. After Jiang Hai gave the order, he immediately put on his clothes and ran into the driver's seat. The other three women listened to Jiang Hai's words and immediately put on their clothes. However, they didn't go back to the room as Jiang Hai said. Instead, they got into the driver's seat together. After entering the driver's seat, Jiang Hai picked up the radio, adjusted the frequency band, and roared. Listen to the boat in front. You are now in my private waters. Please leave immediately. Looking at the fast boat in front of him, Jiang Hai said loudly. But after hearing Jiang Hai's words, the boat not only didn't leave, but also accelerated and rushed over. Seeing the appearance of the boat, Jiang Hai couldn't help but curse. He doesn't know who these people are, but it doesn't mean that he will just let it go. He immediately changed another channel to the Coast Guard. Jiang Hai is a big customer here. These people must ensure his safety. At the same time, he called AI Dahua and told him that something may happen here. Then he started the engine and prepared to stall the boat. No matter what the people on the boat want to do, as long as they can't catch Jiang Hai now, then when the Coast Guard and AI Dahua arrive, the people on the boat will be finished. After all, this is his private waters. This is just like Jiang Hai's back garden. Now that they broke in and ignored the warning, it can be determined that these people are a threat to him. Jiang Hai will never be kind to people who are a threat. Chapter 356. Soren, what should we do? That boat is sailing. In fact, not only Jiang Hai was nervous at this time, but the people on the boat were even more nervous. Seeing Jiang Hai's boat sailing, a person in the boat's cabin shouted nervously, "I know, I'm not blind." Hearing the words of the person next to him, a bearded man driving the boat said with a fierce face. After saying that, he also took a look at his cabin. He only saw that at this time, the cabin of this boat, which was only about 10 meters long, was crowded with about 50 or 60 people. These people were men and women, old and young. Their clothes were very dirty and messy. The whole cabin was filled with a sour smell. When these people saw the bearded man looking at them, many of them subconsciously shrank back. The children directly nestled in the arms of their relatives and looked at the bearded man in horror. "Hey, bitch, you go and find a way to stop that boat." The bearded man was very satisfied with the gazes of these people at this time. Then he turned his head and looked at a woman who had been sitting in the corner. And this bearded man, who was feared by everyone, when he saw this woman, his eyes were a bit evasive. This woman looked like a European. She had white skin and long blonde hair. Looking at her appearance, she was about 25 or 26 years old. Her hair was combed into a ponytail. Her figure was quite good. She was wrapped in a beige military uniform. In addition to a pistol hanging by her leg, there were also 2 handguns. At this time, she was sitting there calmly. Only when she heard the bearded man's words did she look at him. "Why should I help you?" The woman glanced at the bearded man, called Sauron, and said. Her English was a bit strange, but no one dared to laugh at this time. Everyone felt that when she spoke, the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop a few degrees for no reason, and the children snuggled closer into their parents' arms. "You are not helping me. You are helping yourself and these people. I don't need to say more about what you are doing. If you're discovered by the U.S. government, you will have to go back to where you came from." Looking at the woman, the bearded man said with a serious face. Hearing the bearded man's words, the woman lowered her head. After thinking for a while, she stood up again, took out a rope from the cabin next to her, and hung it on her shoulder. Seeing the woman standing up and picking up the rope, the bearded man couldn't help laughing. He immediately returned to the steering room and drove the boat towards Jiang Hai, who was about to dodge. At this time, Jiang Hai saw the other party's actions and couldn't help but frown because he was already sure that these guys were coming for him. Although his boat was not big, it was not small either. This medium-sized yacht was not like the other party's boat, which could turn freely. Although he was already doing it, the speed of turning was relatively slow. At this time, the small boat also ran over quickly. The metal bow of the boat actually made contact with Jiang Hai's side boat. In an instant, a piercing sound of metal was heard. "Who is it? Hurry up and get in the room." Listening to the piercing sound of friction, Jiang Hai was also angry. His yacht was not scratched from Miami to Boston. Now, it was scratched, and it seemed that the other party was coming for him. How could Jiang Hai just let it go? After yelling at the 3 women around him, Jiang Hai tilted the bow of the boat. The boat that was originally going to dodge went straight to the boat next to it. When the 3 women heard Jiang Hai's words, they knew that now was not the time to be entangled. They immediately ran into Jiang Hai's room. As soon as they ran in, Jiang Hai's boat had a close contact with the other party's boat. Jiang Hai's boat was not big, but it cost Jiang Hai more than 5 million yuan. In addition to the money for the interior and brand, the materials used for the boat itself were naturally the best. The metal, fiberglass, and the like were the best. It was far from being comparable to this small boat. When Jiang Hai hit back, the boat was like a small, thin man pushed away by a fat man. It shook violently and dodged to the side. At this time, The people in the cabin had no other choice but to scream and grab everything around them. As for Soren in the steering room, he was also shocked with a cold sweat. At the same time, he also scolded in his heart. These Americans really don't care about the consequences when they do things. If this was in Europe, no one would dare to do this. When he was thinking about it, he did not consider what he did just now. But to his relief, in the two contacts just now, the damn bitch had hooked her rope to the string of Jiang Hai's yacht. At this time, she was climbing up quickly. I didn't expect this guy to be useful. Looking at the woman who was about to climb to the top, Soren could not help but smile. The boat no longer touched Jiang Hai's boat, but followed it unhurriedly. Although Jiang Hai's boat stirred up waves and made the boat shake back and forth, Soren did not care and still followed it closely. This was because he would not be wrong. This was not an ordinary boat. This was a yacht. The person who had the ability to buy such a boat was destined to not be an ordinary person. Since he encountered such a person, it was not his style to not make some trouble. Feeling that the boat was following him unhurriedly, when Jiang Hai wanted to hit it, it would stay away. If he did not hit it, it would come back. This made Jiang Hai a little speechless. Obviously, the pilot of this boat was much better than him. I don't believe that I can't deal with you. Seeing that his boat could not do anything to the other party, Jiang Hai was ready to use his golden finger. After setting the autopilot, Jiang Hai quickly ran out of the cockpit and went to the deck. He picked up a piece of beef infused with spirit energy and threw it into the sea. He was calling for the big idiot. However, the moment his beef was thrown into the sea, Jiang Hai's sixth sense told him that he was trapped. In an instant, Jiang Hai dodged and fell back. The moment he fell, a gunshot rang out. Bang! Jiang Hai's strong dynamic vision saw a bullet fly in front of him and hit his deck. If he did not dodge, the bullet would have drilled into his leg. Who the F***CK? Jiang Hai fell to the ground and rolled to the side in an instant. However, at the same time, he also looked in the direction of the bullet. He saw a woman with a gun at a glance. Needless to say, the bullet was fired by her. He actually dodged it. Oomph. Seeing that Jiang Hai actually dodged her bullet, the woman holding the gun was a little stunned, but she didn't give up. She knew that guns were not banned in the United States. If this man also went to take a gun, although she was confident that she could win the final victory, she was still prepared to take advantage of the situation to pursue and attack. With the gun in her hand, she chased in the direction Jiang Hai dodged in a few steps. However, just as she turned the corner, she saw a huge swimming ring flying straight toward her chest. The swimming ring on the ship was different from the one in the swimming pool. This kind of swimming ring was thick, heavy, and big. If she was hit, even this woman would not feel good, so she could only dodge. At this time, it was impossible to dodge back to the corner, so she could only squat down. However, the moment she squatted down, a figure had already slid horizontally under the swimming ring. This person was no one else but Jiang Hai. The moment the woman dodged the swimming ring, Jiang Hai had already arrived in front of her. Jiang Hai kicked the woman's wrist heavily. In an instant, the pistol she was originally holding was kicked into the sea by Jiang Hai. However, the woman's reaction was not slow. She dropped the pistol and instantly hit Jiang Hai's most painful part with her elbow. If this hit, even if Jiang Hai did not die, he would be half crippled. Unfortunately, Jiang Hai's speed was much faster than her. His left foot instantly pushed against the wall next to him and directly dodged her blow. At the same time, he kicked at her. This woman wasn't bad either. Seeing that her elbow attack didn't work, she directly switched from her elbow to her hand. She propped herself up on the ground and did a handstand to avoid Jiang Hai's kick. F***CK. Looking at the other party's movements, Jiang Hai had to take back his leg. His body was still, and he stood up like a carp. I didn't expect you to have some skills. Tell me, who sent you? Looking at the other party's appearance, Jiang Hai moved gently. When it came to close combat, Jiang Hai was really not afraid of anyone. Although this woman seemed to have good combat power, Jiang Hai was confident that she would definitely not be able to beat him, even if she had a knife in her hand. Grim Reaper. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman didn't care. She just faintly answered Jiang Hai's question. She stepped on the ground with her right foot and instantly rushed toward Jiang Hai. The two knives almost instantly formed an X shape and slashed toward Jiang Hai's head. There was no doubt that if Jiang Hai was slashed, his head would really be separated from his body. However, Jiang Hai was not so easy to deal with. His body lay back, and at the same time, his right foot kicked directly toward the woman's breasts. This woman was not easy to provoke. At this time, she actually retracted her knives and wanted to cut off Jiang Hai's foot. However, Jiang Hai smiled lightly. The leg that was originally kicked out instantly swung, and the other leg directly kicked toward the woman. Although the woman's reaction was not slow, and she blocked Jiang Hai's leg with her hand, Jiang Hai's strength, Chapter 357. Bang! Clang! There were two consecutive sounds. The first was the sound of Jiang Hai's leg hitting the woman's arm, and the other was the sound of the woman being kicked out and hitting the guardrail on the side of the ship. Fortunately, the guardrail on Jiang Hai's side was very high and sturdy. Otherwise, the woman would have been kicked out. But even so, the woman's body had suffered a lot of injuries. Her back was hit, so her spine must have been injured. And Jiang Hai's kick also dislocated her right arm. Fortunately, Jiang Hai also fell to the ground, so it would take some time for him to get up. After the woman was kicked out, she immediately propped herself up with her left hand and endured the pain. She even put her right hand on the deck and twisted it hard. After hearing a painful sound of grinding teeth, the woman actually forced her arm back. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little moved. This woman was really tenacious. Ooh, huh? Jiang Hai didn't have any idea of showing mercy to a woman. Since this woman wanted to deal with him and didn't say who sent her, Jiang Hai didn't have any psychological burden to deal with her. As long as he didn't kill her, he always had a way to get what he wanted to know from this woman's mouth. Taking advantage of her illness, take her life. Jiang Hai secretly shouted and rushed over. Seeing Jiang Hai rushing over, the woman's spirit was also highly concentrated. Seeing Jiang Hai's punch coming, the woman twisted her waist, and her right hand instantly grabbed Jiang Hai's elbow. At the same time, her left hand pressed on Jiang Hai's armpit. She wanted to use this force to throw Jiang Hai out directly, but how could Jiang Hai get out so easily? Feeling something was wrong, Jiang Hai had already kicked the guardrail in front of him in an instant. His body turned in the air, and at the same time, his hand that was originally tied grabbed the woman's wrist and flew over with her. As Jiang Hai landed, the woman also fell heavily on the plate armor. This woman was not easy to deal with. She fell so heavily, but she could still get up in an instant. She quickly ran to the side, wiping the blood from her mouth because of the fall just now, and stared at Jiang Hai closely. "Are you still not going to say it?" Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai chuckled. This woman's strength is good. Her close combat ability is even stronger than Bale's. It seems that the other party has spent a lot of money in order to kill him this time. Although he didn't know who the other party was, it didn't prevent Jiang Hai from forcing the person's mouth. Grim Reaper. Looking at Jiang Hai, still asking her such a question, the woman also grinned and said with a serious face, "Courting death." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed and instantly rushed toward the woman again. Looking at Jiang Hai's kick, the woman didn't dare to use her hand to block it. Jiang Hai's kick was aimed at her chest. Jiang Hai's strength is too strong. Even if he is holding back his strength, she can't block it, so she instantly dodged to the left. But at this time, Jiang Hai's foot also hit the wall. Borrowing this force, Jiang Hai directly turned in the air and kicked towards the woman's head. The woman had no way to dodge this time. She could only cross her hands to block this attack. Jiang Hai's foot hit the wall, but just like what she thought just now, would she be able to handle it? With a bang, the woman was directly kicked out by Jiang Hai like a cannonball. This time, she hit the fence next to her again. Last time, the fence supported her weight, but this time, Jiang Hai hit the fence with all his strength. In an instant, a piece of the fence flew into the sea, and at the last moment, She firmly grasped the edge of the boat's string with both hands, trying to climb up, but at this moment, Jiang Hai came over. He stepped on the woman's hand with one foot unhurriedly. Ugh! It is said that the 10 fingers are connected to the heart. Under Jiang Hai's trampling, even if the woman is strong, she can't help but gritted her teeth and made a muffled sound, because it was too painful. But Jiang Hai's eyes didn't have a trace of pity. If you don't want to say it, I'm going to feed you to the sharks. Looking at the woman's appearance, Jiang Hai said with a chuckle. Because at this time, the piece of beef has taken effect. Big Fool and his wife have appeared in Jiang Hai's sight at this time. I said it, Grim Reaper. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman still said stubbornly, "Oh, then you can go and report to the Grim Reaper." Hearing the woman still say this, Jiang Hai can't help but feel a bit ridiculous. But if she doesn't say it, then Jiang Hai can find out by himself. Then his foot began to gradually increase the strength, and the woman's face became more and more pale. Bastard, that smelly woman is about to die. At this time, this scene was seen clearly by the people on the ship, and the bearded man couldn't help but be angry. After handing the ship to his deputy, he took out an AK-47 from the cabinet next to him and stood on the side of the ship's bow and pulled the trigger at Jiang Hai. In fact, when he came out, Jiang Hai had already seen him. When he raised his gun, Jiang Hai had already flashed back to the ship. He didn't think he could withstand the bullets. Sure enough, at the moment he flashed back, the sound of gunshots also sounded on the sea. F*CK, who the F*CK, Big Fool attacked that ship. Feeling the scene of bullets flying above his head, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be angry and shouted loudly. Hearing his words, the woman who was still hanging there was also anxious. There are still many people on the ship. She really ignored the fact that Jiang Hai has a helper. It's understandable that such a big ship doesn't even have a helper. Just as she looked around nervously, trying to see where Jiang Hai's helper was, she didn't find that one of the 2 sharks that were originally under her had disappeared, and on the other side of the ship, the bearded man named Soren had also finished a magazine of bullets. "Give me the magazine." Seeing that he had missed his target, he turned around and roared at one of his subordinates beside him. Hearing his words, the lackey immediately ran towards the cabin. But before he could run into the cabin, the lackey heard a loud noise. Suddenly, a huge black shadow jumped out of the sea. Under everyone's surprised eyes, this black shadow popped out in an instant and bit the man's lower body. The naked figure on the ship made everyone stunned. As people who beg for food on this sea, they can't not recognize this thing, shark. Help me." When the man just screamed, the shark also swung its tail and jumped back into the sea. In an instant, red blood emerged from the bottom of the sea, and then half of the man's body floated up. "My God, Allah above, this time we're dead." Seeing this horrible scene, everyone in the cabin panicked. They looked at the floating body in front of them in disbelief and sank back to the bottom of the sea again. Even the guy named Soren had cold sweat on his head and looked at the calm water with a dull face. Just as he was at a loss, another sound came from the stern of the ship. He looked back and found that it was the same shark. It had jumped onto the ship again and bit the lower body of a sailor at the stern of the ship, pulling him into the sea. "Quick, go back to the cabin." With the death of the second man, Soren finally reacted and shouted loudly. Hearing his roar, the other sailors quickly gathered. They were not afraid of death, but they were afraid of dying so miserably. At the same time, Soren also found the magazine of the AK-47 in the ship's cockpit. He had a gun in his hand and bullets in the gun. His mood, which had been scared, was finally a little better. Now he was waiting for the man-eating shark to emerge again. He would give it a shot and let it have an unforgettable experience. But he didn't think that this shark was much smarter than he thought. Unknowingly, the shark that was still surrounding the woman disappeared. After waiting for about a minute, just when the crew felt that the shark was gone, a man suddenly screamed. Hearing his scream, they only saw that at this time on the side of the ship's bow, a dorsal fin had emerged. At this time, it was approaching them quickly. Seeing the appearance of this dorsal fin, Soren and others picked up their weapons and prepared to attack. But at this moment, suddenly, a violent shake came from the other side of the ship. Before these people could figure out what was going on, two of the crew members standing closest to the ship had been thrown into the sea by the shaking. At this time, the original dorsal fin also disappeared from the horizontal. Help, help! As soon as they fell into the water, the two men panicked and immediately wanted to climb to the ship. But at this time, two bloody mouths had appeared under them. They didn't even have time to shout for help for the third time. The two men had been dragged into the water. When the two appeared on the water again, one had lost his lower body, and the other had lost a leg. Looking at the scene in front of him, Soren felt that his spine was constantly emitting cold air. He never thought that the shark would play a sneak attack, and he didn't understand why the shark was targeting his ship. Even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't believe that the reason why the shark targeted him was because of Jiang Hai's order. At this time, Big Fool and Big Fool's wife under the water had also finished resting and were ready for the next round of attack. At this time, on the deck of the yacht, the woman also climbed back on the ship. At this time, she didn't know what happened on the ship below, but the screams and roars came into her ears. She knew that if the battle on her side didn't end soon, the chances of the people on the ship surviving were not high. But against Jiang Hai, how could she have any chance of winning? If Jiang Hai was so easy to deal with, then he would not be twice the limit of human beings. Chapter 358. When the woman climbed back onto the boat, Jiang Hai had already stood up. How could the current Jiang Hai allow this woman to cause trouble for him again? So in a flash, he was already in front of her. Before the woman had time to react, his fist had already hit the woman's stomach heavily. The instantaneous impact. Even if this woman is really strong, she was still beaten to the ground like a prawn. Looking at the woman on the ground, Jiang Hai picked up a rope without saying a word. In fact, it was the rope that the woman used to climb onto the boat just now. He tied the woman up firmly. Jiang Hai doesn't care whether there will be any scars left or not. It has nothing to do with him. So he tied her up very hard. After ensuring that the woman will never escape, he also looked at the battle between the human and the shark in the distance. But obviously, the people on that boat are not the opponents of Big Fool. Looking at the messy floating corpses and broken limbs on the sea, Jiang Hai couldn't help but grin in disgust. It's really bloody. Muttering in a low voice, Jiang Hai also took a deep breath to overcome the feeling of nausea. But at this moment, a burst of helicopter sounds came. Then from two directions, two helicopters flew over. One of them is still very familiar to Jiang Hai. It's his Helicopter 11. The other one is from the United States because the word police is painted on the helicopter. It's the Coast Guard. Because they're also a police force. Looking at his subordinates and the police coming, Jiang Hai also knew that it's time to stop. So he whistled, and Big Fool under the sea swam towards the deep sea with his wife. At this time, two helicopters also appeared one after another, but Jiang Hai's helicopter went to his yacht first. As for the police helicopter, it went to the boat first. After all, these policemen are not stupid. Now that they're in Jiang Hai's sea, they naturally knew that disturbing the master before figuring out the situation was a very civilized behavior. Therefore, they decided to go and see the broken ship first to see what's going on. When the door of Jiang Hai's helicopter opened, Belle Lester's face appeared in front of Jiang Hai. "Boss, are you all right?" Seeing Jiang Hai standing on the deck, Belle Lester directed Marin Rupert to fly the plane over while lowering the escalator. He was worthy of being a person who had stayed in the Delta before. In just a few moments, he had already landed on the ground. "It's nothing. I just don't know where these people came from. All right, this woman is very powerful. I feel that she might be even stronger than you." Seeing Bale walking towards him, Jiang Hai revealed a smile, indicating that he was fine. He even kicked the woman not far from him and said to Bale with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bale also looked at this woman. However, what he saw gave him a fright. His gaze was completely focused on the scar on the woman's right arm. This guy is from the KGB. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bale carefully came to Jiang Hai's side and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai froze for a moment. "KGB, what is that?" KGB is the CIA of Russia. She should be an agent. Seeing Jiang Hai's confusion, Bale whispered, "In this world, there are many organizations, and the agent organizations are led by 4 major organizations. Among them, the most powerful is the CIA of the United States, the CIA of the United States, the Federal Security Service of Russia, the United Kingdom's MI6 is the third, and the fourth is Israel's Mossad. The predecessor of the Federal Security Service of Russia was the KGB before they separated in 1991. The current leader of the Soviet Union came from this organization. And no matter what organization it is, there will be something similar to a serial number on their body to facilitate identification. Bale used to work in the Delta, so he naturally knows all the serial numbers. Although the serial number on this woman's arm was destroyed, he can guess where this woman came from. Listening to Bale's words, Jiang Hai frowned. This time, he was even more curious about his enemy. To be able to hire an international secret service organization to deal with him, could it be that someone knew about his oil futures? Thinking of this, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed. This woman can't fall into the hands of the Americans. Otherwise, if the Americans knew that he had oil futures, he would be in danger. Although the oil futures is a protective talisman, Jiang Hai is now in the United States, so he has to be careful. Take her in. I will interrogate her myself at night. Jiang Hai whispered to Bale when he saw that several people had landed and the police had taken control of the ship. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Bale also expressed that he understood. Immediately, using Jiang Hai as a cover, he quietly dragged the woman from the other side into a room under the bed. When he hid the woman, the police had already taken control of the situation. Several of them came to Jiang Hai's side. When they reached the deck, several heavily armed policemen also jumped down from above. "Hello, Mr. Jiang Hai. I'm the captain of the Boston Coast Guard. My name is Louster Wilson. I'm sorry to have frightened you this time." After landing on the deck, one of the big men walked over with a smile. Since he was able to become the captain, he naturally had some special channels. He knew that the yellow man in front of him was a real millionaire at the level of hundreds of millions. If something happened to him here, he would be in big trouble. Fortunately, it seemed that he was fine now. "Hello, Mr. Wilson. Can you explain the situation?" After shaking hands with the soldier, Jiang Hai asked plainly. "Mr. Jiang Hai, I have to admit that you are an unlucky rich man. That ship is actually a refugee ship. They fled from Europe. Because they are illegal immigrants, after encountering your ship, they were very scared, so there was a conflict just now." Hearing Jiang Hai ask what was going on, Wilson also said with a smile, "Refugee ship? There are refugees in Europe?" Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. He also knew a lot about refugees, illegal immigrants, and the like. When he first heard the word, it was from the movies in Hong Kong. It was said that when it was not easy to make a living in China, many people would go to Hong Kong to make a living. When they were smuggled to Hong Kong, because the people were compressed in the cabin like a snake, the stowaways were also called human snakes, and the smugglers were called the head of the snake. However, it was the first time Jiang Hai saw a real stowaway. He walked to the side of the ship and took a look. Sure enough, he found that most of the people who came out of the ship were dirty and messy. There were men and women, old and young, and they all looked hungry. Seeing this, Jiang Hai didn't understand. He used to watch the news in China. Didn't it say that Europe was a very safe place? Why were there refugees in Europe? There were so many of them. Originally, Europe was the place where refugees migrated, like West Asia and Africa. I think Mr. Jiang Hai also knows about it. However, something bad happened in Eastern Europe this year. Many places in Europe were affected. The forces of both sides, one was the strongest in Europe, Soviet Russia, and the other was the rebel army. These refugees will be expelled from other countries in Europe. After all, not all countries dare to compete with Soviet Russia for population. That's why they came to us. We're the freest country. Looking at Jiang Hai, Wilson said proudly. It was obvious that he was very proud of being an American. "I don't care why these people came. Just now, they were shooting at me with an AK. I hope you can give me a satisfactory answer." Listening to the captain's words, Jiang Hai also waved his hand. He was not interested in fighting. At least he was very satisfied with his current life. He didn't want to destroy such a comfortable life. Seeing that Jiang Hai was not interested in what he said, the man smiled and then saluted to show that he understood. The next thing was much simpler. After he briefly understood the situation with Jiang Hai, he took the boat of people to Boston. From the beginning to the end, they did not mention anything about the woman, which made Jiang Hai feel very strange. With the woman's background, her status among these people should be very high. However, these people were arrested, and none of them said anything about the woman. This made Jiang Hai feel quite bad. It was very likely that these people were agents. But at this time, these people had been taken over by the police. Jiang Hai could do nothing but frown. Boss, these people should really be refugees. Probably seeing Jiang Hai's doubts, Belle whispered. How do you know? Hearing Belle's words, Jiang Hai looked at him curiously. What's the situation? There are 2 points. First, these people are too weak. Their muscles are loose, and their faces are pale. They really look like they have been starving for many days. Second, they don't have any killing intent. Bale said slowly as he looked at the people in front of him. Jiang Hai nodded at Belle's words. But even if these people are really refugees, it can't prove that the woman was not sent by others to kill him. At least the militants on the boat should know her identity. Then it is very likely that they know his identity. It seems that there is a high chance that he is being targeted. Let's go back. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai's face became a little ugly. As soon as he turned around, he walked toward the steering room. Seeing that Jiang Hai also left, Marin Rupert also went in the direction of the manor. As for Belle, he stayed here. Speaking of which, he has never been on such a luxurious yacht. It's really refreshing. Chapter 359. Jiang Hai, are you really okay? After the yacht docked, Jiang Hai winked at Belle. This man naturally knew how to transfer the woman to his territory without anyone knowing. As for Jiang Hai, he took Aphrodite and the others back to his villa. But on the way back, Feng Yunxin and the others kept asking. Because they also heard the gunshot just now, they were really afraid that Jiang Hai had an accident, but they were also afraid that if they came out, they would be more of a hindrance, so they were very tangled in the room. But fortunately, the chaos only lasted for less than 10 minutes before it subsided. After learning that Jiang Hai was fine and the yacht was damaged a little, the girls felt like they had survived a disaster. Of course, I'm fine. You can rest assured. Listening to their words, Jiang Hai smiled and said while driving. He was fine, but it doesn't mean that others are fine. The car quickly drove back to Jiang Hai's villa. Jiang Hai also entered the villa with the 3 girls. Well, don't think too much. It's just an accident. We met a group of stowaways. They were afraid that we would expose their whereabouts, so they attacked us. You should go back and pick out the photos first. I'll take you out to sea in a few days when I have time. Looking at the 3 girls who still had some lingering fear, Jiang Hai smiled. This time, he deliberately didn't ask Aphrodite to go back first, because he was afraid that she would scare herself when she went back. Jiang Hai still remembered how scared they were after the thrilling scene in Miami. At that time, the 12 of them were so scared that they didn't dare to go back to their room to sleep, let alone now. It's also good to accompany Feng Yunxin and AI Xiaoxi here. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, although the 3 of them were a little tangled, they still nodded to show that they understood, and then walked back to their room. As for Jiang Hai, he sat in the living room. He was still waiting for Belle's news. About half an hour later, Belle drove a small 4-wheeled motorcycle to Jiang Hai's house, and behind him was a piece of beef and a sack. It seems that he was hiding in this way. As soon as Jiang Hai saw him coming, he immediately went out to greet him. Belle carried the beef, and Jiang Hai carried the sack, and went to a warehouse on the first floor. Originally, there were many warehouses on the first floor, some for meat, some for vegetables, some for fish, and so on. After all, the output of the manor was originally placed in the villa. There was no other warehouse in the manor to store these things. But after Jiang Hai came, he lived alone. Naturally, he didn't need so many warehouses. Even after Delina and Marion arrived, Jiang Hai didn't need so much space. Besides the beef, he had no other warehouses. The seafood that he caught was also stored in this warehouse. As for the vegetables, he could eat them whenever he wanted. And during the winter, he would buy them and store them in the fridge. In total, he didn't eat much. He was a well-deserved carnivore. Because of this, Jiang Hai still had some empty warehouses on the first floor. Today, Jiang Hai was in one of the warehouses, preparing to interrogate the woman. After Belle delivered the beef and the human, he left. As a subordinate, he naturally knew that Jiang Hai had a lot of secrets, but he liked his current job very much. First, he liked being a cowboy. Second, Jiang Hai was very good to them. He gave them a high salary, good treatment, good food, and good living conditions. Most importantly, he received a bonus of more than 200,000 yuan a while ago. This made him know when to leave and when to come forward. Sometimes, the more you know, the more dangerous it is. Jiang Hai was very pleased with Belle's move, because he really had a lot of secrets that he couldn't let others know. Having a subordinate who knew when to advance and retreat was very good, but Jiang Hai couldn't trust him wholeheartedly. For the time being, Jiang Hai didn't want to think about the question of whether to trust him or not. He still wanted to ask the other party about the situation. In this warehouse, Jiang Hai tied the woman to a sofa. It wasn't that Jiang Hai wanted her to be so comfortable, but because he didn't have a chair in his house. How could he have known that someone wanted to assassinate him and even caught him? So he could only tie the woman to the sofa in two M-shaped positions. Then he placed a table in front of the woman with a very bright light on it, shining on the woman's face. After that, he didn't wake the woman up and directly left. This was because he still had other things to do. In the afternoon, everything went on as usual. In the evening, after eating dinner, Jiang Hai accompanied the three women to sleep. But this time, there was no battle between them. This was because the three women were frightened. Jiang Hai didn't say anything. After coaxing the three women to sleep, Jiang Hai asked Xiao Bai and Xiao Huang to go downstairs with him and guard the door while he went into the warehouse. After this afternoon and the first half of the night's rest, the woman had already recovered a little. As soon as she heard the door open, she sat up straight and walked over. Looking at the tape on the woman's mouth, Jiang Hai chuckled and tore it. With a tearing sound, the tape was torn open. Although it was very painful, the woman didn't even frown. Now I will ask you a question, and you'll answer it. If your answer is good, I may give you a quick death. If your answer is not good, then don't blame me. Looking at the woman, Jiang Hai said word by word, then sat in front of the woman. Okay, can I have a glass of water first? Seeing Jiang Hai sitting in front of her, the woman didn't seem to have the intention to resist. After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, she slowly asked Jiang Hai. She hasn't drunk water for more than a day. To be honest, the woman didn't know Jiang Hai. She still has an impression of a scene on the ship just now. However, Belle was right about one thing. This woman is indeed a member of the KGB, or it can be said that she used to be one, because she has already betrayed them. Although she is a member of the KGB, she doesn't think that she has to guard any secrets. So after hearing Jiang Hai's words, she chose to be honest. At least, she doesn't want to lose her life because of this. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. It seems that the plot is wrong. At this time, she should only have two reactions. One is to curse loudly, saying something like the heavens are dead and the yellow sky is rising, asterisk off asterisk. Something like my companions will definitely not let you go, or she should be silent and ask for water now. She surrendered so quickly. Although a little curious, Jiang Hai still took a glass of water and a straw and put it in front of the woman. As soon as the woman saw the water, she immediately tried to drink it with the straw. People will die if they don't drink water for 3 days. Now, the woman hasn't drunk water for more than a day, 2 days. She didn't move on the ship in order to not dehydrate herself and maintain her fighting strength. But she didn't expect to fight with Jiang Hai. The most important thing is that she lost. In the end, she was knocked out by Belle and thrown under the bed. Now, she's almost dehydrated. After drinking the big jar of water slowly, the woman breathed a sigh of relief. She finally came back to life. Can you say it now? Looking at the woman who finished drinking the water, Jiang Hai raised his hands and asked indifferently, Yes. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman quickly said one sentence, then there was no sound. Who the F asterisk CK? Are you kidding me? Say it. Hearing the woman's silence, Jiang Hai became anxious. He slammed the table and said to the woman, but hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman was more confused. Carefully waiting for Jiang Hai to finish, the woman hesitated and tentatively asked Jiang Hai, you didn't ask. Oh, sorry, name. Hearing the woman's words, Jiang Hai remembered that he really should ask. Azalina Vicabrio. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman said a name. You're so talkative. Are you from Russia? Hearing the woman's words, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. No, I'm from Milan. But after hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman frowned. Obviously, she was not very interested in the word Russia. Instead, she said with a little pride, Jiang Hai also knows a little about Ulan. It has a good relationship with Huaxia. When Russia was not called Russia, Ulan was also a part of that country. Later, it split, and Ulan became the second largest country in Europe. And it has mastered very advanced nuclear capabilities and heavy industry foundation, but the light industry is really bad. In recent years, its relationship with China has been very good. Many companies in China work in Ulan. And the most important thing is that the ratio of men to women in that country is very unbalanced. There are more women than men. It is a paradise for losers. You are from Gakub, right? Looking at the woman, Jiang Hai continued to ask. I used to be, but I defected. Hearing Jiang Hai's question, the woman continued to answer honestly. Defected? Why did you attack me if you defected? Putting down the pen in his hand, Jiang Hai looked at her with amusement and continued to make up stories. I didn't take the initiative to attack you. I was on that stowaway boat and was about to escape to the United States, but I accidentally bumped into your boat. The smuggler said that if I didn't want to be caught, I needed to control you first. After their boat left, I would let you go. The first shot I fired at you was aimed at your leg. I didn't intend to kill you. Looking at Jiang Hai, the woman named Azalina Vicabrio said seriously. She was telling the truth, but unfortunately, Jiang Hai didn't believe it. Since you don't want to say it, then continue to stay here. Seeing the other party's appearance, Jiang Hai chuckled. Since she refused to admit it, then continue to stay here. As soon as the desk lamp was turned off, Jiang Hai was about to leave. Hey, I'm telling the truth. I really didn't want to attack you. Who do you want me to accuse? Seeing that Jiang Hai was about to leave, Azalina also panicked and immediately said loudly to Jiang Hai. It was the first time she was like this. She was obviously telling the truth, but no one believed her. Chapter 360. This is your boarding pass. Are you sure you don't want to keep it? At Guadalajara Airport in New York, Jiang Hai held 2 boarding passes in his hand and said to Feng Yinshen and AI Xiaoxi in front of him. Yes, sometimes time always passes quietly. Unknowingly, Feng Yinshen and AI Xiaoxi have been in the United States for 11 days. Their visas have expired today. It's time to return home. Jiang Hai and the others returned to New York from his manor 2 days ago. It's not easy to come here, not to mention the relationship between these 2 women and himself. Jiang Hai was also very generous. They stayed at the Westin Hotel in Times Square. The food was also the best. Of course, in addition to these, Jiang Hai also bought a lot of things for them. But the 2 women were very stubborn. They lived in Jiang Hai and ate Jiang Hai's food. However, they didn't want the clothes Jiang Hai bought for them. But Jiang Hai still sent them out and mixed them in the luggage they were transporting. After all, they were transporting too many things. In addition to shopping, they also went to all the places in New York. Although it was only 2 days, they still had a lot of fun. With Jiang Hai as a fake guide, they also went to all the places in New York. They had taken a picture with the Statue of Liberty, looked at the sea with binoculars, and went to Broadway Street. They had also gone shopping there and watched an opera, The Lion King. They had all seen this cartoon before, but this was the first time they had seen a stage play. But unfortunately, Feng Yinshen and AI Xiaoxi didn't understand what they were talking about, so they ran away after watching 2/3 of it. However, the 2 women saved some small videos in their mobile phones. Whether they finished watching it or not, they at least watched it. They also went to Wall Street to experience the feeling of a financial city. But to be honest, two young models and a cattle farmer really couldn't feel the elite atmosphere here. They were more like tourists. No, they were tourists. After walking around the area, they also went to Central Park, the United Nations headquarters, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which was the prototype of the amazing night at the museum. They also went to the top floor of the Empire State Building. This was where King Kong had taken the plane for his beloved woman. After avoiding the cameras, Feng Yunxun and AI Xiaoxi also helped Jiang Hai take the plane. There was also New York's Grand Central train station. Above the train station was the home court of the Knicks. Unfortunately, the NBA regular season in May had already ended. The home court of the Knicks, who had not entered the playoffs, was quite deserted. Of course, in June, there was another big event here, which was the talent show. However, this year was not a big year, and it was estimated that there would not be too much explosive news. Finally, the most famous one was Times Square, but Jiang Hai and the others lived there, so there wasn't much to see. Compared to these attractions, it was obvious that Feng Yunxin and AI Xiaoxi were more interested in Fifth Avenue. The luxury goods that were inexplicably lethal for these women. But even abroad, the price of these things was much lower than expected. For example, a Burberry windbreaker was sold for $100,000 in China, but it was sold for about $10,000 here. However, $10,000 was not a small amount. For AI Xiaoxi, she could only look at it. Feng Yunxun, on the other hand, was quite wealthy. She bought a set of clothes back. Of course, all of this was seen by Jiang Hai. The clothes that Jiang Hai bought for them were naturally from this street. From the windbreaker, shirt, pants, boots, shoes, and bag, the whole set cost $200,000 per person. It was just that they didn't know it. In addition, Jiang Hai also gave them two special gifts. One of them was placed in the luggage, and the other was placed on Feng Yunxin. Feng Yunxin knew about this, but AI Xiaoxi didn't know. I said, "We will think about it again. Don't worry. If we have a result, we will tell you as soon as possible." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunxin raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, "She is not a woman who likes to rely on men. Although it is good to stay with Jiang Hai, she still has to go back and think about it." Looking at the two first-class boarding passes in their hands, this was a gift that they happily accepted, because if they go back in economy class, it would be too uncomfortable. It just so happens that the money for the economy class tickets will be their subsidy. Although these two tickets can buy a good car when they return to China, for Jiang Hai, 100,000 Huaxia yuan is actually not a lot of money. After all, his current money is calculated in hundreds of millions. Well, I have said what I need to say. I wish you a safe trip. Hearing Feng Yunxin's resolute words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shrug and finally said helplessly. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Feng Yunxin and AI Xiaoxi on this side couldn't help but laugh. "You have been on the plane so many times. Don't you know that the plane flies against the wind? Won't you fall down with the wind, idiot? Okay, let's not talk about it. We have to go." AI Xiaoxi looked at Jiang Hai and said softly, then took the initiative to walk in front of Jiang Hai. Under Feng Yunxin's gaze, she and Jiang Hai had a wet kiss. After about 3 minutes, they left. She felt that she really couldn't stay here any longer, because if she stayed any longer, she was really afraid that she would fall in love with Jiang Hai. At that time, it would be really troublesome, because she knows that she and Feng Yunxin have no future with Jiang Hai. When Jiang Hai didn't have time to react, Feng Yunxin's mouth was also on his. After kissing the two girls goodbye, the two girls also carried their handbags and walked into the security checkpoint, looking back 3 times with each step. Until they couldn't be seen, Jiang Hai sighed. To be honest, in these 11 days, Jiang Hai was really happy. There were girls hugging him to sleep until dawn, especially with 2 girls. He didn't even think about it before. Now that he thought about it, it was like a dream. When these people left, Jiang Hai also felt empty in his heart. AI, those who should leave can't leave, and those who should stay can't stay. Until he received a call from Feng Yunxin, telling Jiang Hai that they had ascended the throne. Jiang Hai also sighed. After hanging up the phone, He whispered in a low voice. Well, from today onwards, I will be a single dog again. But I seem to have Aphrodite. My head hurts. Patting his forehead, Jiang Hai said somewhat speechlessly. Originally, when Feng Yunshen and AI Xiaoxi were here, the existence of Aphrodite made Jiang Hai not so embarrassed. But now that these two women are gone, the only one in the entire manor who had a special relationship with Jiang Hai was Aphrodite. This made Jiang Hai a little embarrassed. For a while, he didn't want to go back and face Aphrodite like this. Should I find a reason to go back a few days later? Touching his chin, Jiang Hai muttered in a low voice. After thinking about it for a while, it seemed that this was the best solution at the moment. Therefore, he made a call back. He did not call Aphrodite directly, but called Delina and Marion, telling them that he still had some things to do in New York and would be back a few days later. These days, Aphrodite will help take care of the woman he's still locked in the warehouse. Yes, the former KGB female agent caught by Jiang Hai when he was in danger at sea last time was still locked in Jiang Hai's warehouse, but she had changed from her original form to another one. Jiang Hai deliberately welded a small cell in the warehouse. There was originally a toilet and a drain in the warehouse, so Jiang Hai didn't have to worry about her going to the bathroom. After asking for so many days, Jiang Hai actually believed that she shouldn't be sent by others, because he really didn't have any interrogation methods to use, and this woman was also very cooperative and didn't care about being locked up here. It didn't matter if Aphrodite helped him deliver a meal or something like that. Now the person he trusted the most in the manor, besides Delina and Marion, was Aphrodite. After all, the relationship between the two was also somewhat unclear. After Jiang Hai finished the phone call, he breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, it was temporary, but the next question came. What was he doing in New York? Traveling? He was crazy, traveling here. It's not like he hasn't been here before. And the most important thing was that he had just played here, and there was really nothing fun to do here. It was said that men become bad when they are rich, and rich and bored men are even more likely to become bad. For example, Jiang Hai now. Some people said that it only takes a week for people to develop a habit. Jiang Hai is now hugging a girl to sleep, and it has gradually become a habit. Now, if he hugs a pillow to sleep at night, he will definitely feel uncomfortable. Thinking of this, he thought of Moses Adams. That guy seemed to know where the fun places were in this place. A telephone call was made. Moses Adams was at that moment in Winthrop, wrangling with the old fellows of the town. With Jiang Hai's advice and the old guy's own research, Winthrop can indeed be developed into a tourist attraction. Mayor Wallace had already gone to the Alabama mountains a few days ago and discussed with the Iroquois people there. They can sell a large number of handmade wood carvings to Mayor Wallace, and they can also sell him wild American ginseng and the like. Of course, they have to exchange something for it. Mayor Wallace also agreed to this. In the end, the town discussed a total of 10 tourism affairs, namely a seaside villa, a public bathing area, fishing boats going out in the morning, a horse ranch, some small private ranches, visits to farms, expansion of a gun shop and shooting range, a street of souvenir shops, the earliest church in Massachusetts, a party square for barbecue, and a fishing area in the river. Chapter 361. Of the 10 development options, the public baths, schools, party squares, and fishing grounds would all be funded by the town hall, and all the profits would go to the town hall. The town hall would organize the race course, private estates, and fishing boats, and collect about 10% of the publicity fees. The rest would go to the original owners. Jiang Hai was only allowed to participate in 3 projects, which were also the most important ones. One of them was a seaside villa. Moses Adams had already negotiated that Jiang Hai would fully fund the construction, and the town hall would provide the manpower and approval. After the villa was built, the land and the house would belong to Jiang Hai, but it could only be used for commercial purposes. Of course, Jiang Hai could live in it himself. Jiang Hai didn't want management rights, but the annual dividends would be 58. 2% for Jiang Hai, 31. 7% for the town hall, and 1% for all the registered residents of the town. Was this also called equal distribution? Well, it seemed to be a bit of a misnomer. Jiang Hai funded the expansion of the gun shop and the shooting range, but the gun shop belonged to the town hall. The guns and bullets in the shop were all bought and processed by the government. The same went for the licenses and other things. Jiang Hai also didn't participate in the management, but he would receive 30% of the annual dividends. Jiang Hai fully funded the construction of a souvenir street. There were 37 shops on the street, and Jiang Hai owned 11 of them. These 11 houses were Jiang Hai's. He could do whatever he wanted with them. He could rent them out or sell them. It was all up to him. Of course, if the attraction didn't work out, these 11 houses would probably be of no use at all. Jiang Hai was quite satisfied with the negotiations, even though he only took up 3 of the 10 projects. However, for Jiang Hai, this was a good thing. He had a lot of cash in his hands, but if he kept the cash in his hands, in addition to being demoted, it was easy to attract the jealousy of others. Now that he had invested it into real estate, it was a good thing. According to Moses Adams, Jiang Hai would need to invest more than $200 million in these 3 projects. Among them, the shooting range was the cheapest. It only required an investment of about $20 million. Expansion and soundproofing were the only 2 things that needed to be considered. The villa complex cost the most money. It cost more than 170 million yuan. After all, Jiang Hai planned to build 20 villas in one phase. Fortunately, they were in America. If they were in China, it would be impossible to build 20 villas for more than $1 billion. Especially on the seaside, the villas built were not small. The villas designed by Jiang Hai all had 2 doors, one facing the road and the other facing the sea. The whole villa had a garage. It was a 2.5-story building, covering an area of 600 square meters. The whole villa had a usable area of about 1,000 square meters. The first floor was the kind that could be directly opened. From the very beginning, Jiang Hai had never intended to rent these seaside villas to ordinary people. These villas were specially prepared for the rich. $2,000 per night was a very fair price. Of course, for ordinary people, it was unacceptable. As for the street, it would cost at least 50 million yuan. It would cost almost half of Jiang Hai's cash. But Jiang Hai didn't care because he knew that he would earn the money back sooner or later. Moses Adams also performed very well in the process of this negotiation. Jiang Hai estimated that his commission would be in the millions or even tens of millions. So at this time, there was a hint of excitement in his voice. After reporting the recent situation, Jiang Hai also asked what he wanted to know the most at present. Where does a single, rich man go to play at night in New York? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams naturally knew what he meant, so he gave him an address. According to Moses Adams, it was a bar, but he didn't say what kind of bar it was. However, Jiang Hai also guessed it, although he didn't like places that were too violent, like those nightclubs. But if it was a place to play, he wasn't very opposed. For a while, he didn't know why, but he was still a little excited. After writing down the address, Jiang Hai also hung up the phone and drove back to the hotel. After arriving at the hotel, Jiang Hai went to eat first, and then stayed in his presidential suite until night fell. After all, when he, AI Xiaoxi, and Feng Yinshan came together, it was impossible for them to book more rooms. Naturally, a presidential suite was enough. For this reason, they even took 2 sets of photos here. It was really because there were not many opportunities to stay here. Unknowingly, time slowly passed. According to Moses Adams, the place would open for business at night. When the moon was high in the sky, Jiang Hai came out of his room. With a shield on, Jiang Hai merged into the rolling traffic downstairs, according to the location indicated on the GPS. New York was actually not a whole city, unlike some cities in China or Hong Kong. In fact, New York was a city made up of many islands, so there were many sea bridges in New York. Of course, these islands were very close to each other. The whole of New York was divided into 3 islands: Manhattan, Staten Island, and Long Island. Among them, Manhattan was New York. It could also be said that it was the center of the world. Next to Manhattan was the Bronx. Next to Manhattan and the Bronx was Queens. Further down was Brooklyn. Further down, there was a separate island, which was Staten Island. If Boston was the world of the gray gang in the past, it had changed now. However, it could be said that New York was still ruled by the gray gang. Of course, the major tourist areas, like Manhattan, were relatively peaceful. The police were everywhere, so it was naturally difficult for any kind of crime to survive in such an environment. But except for Manhattan, the other areas were not so good, especially the Bronx, which was part of Queens. It was also the most chaotic place, and Brooklyn was the place where black people lived. Of course, the place that Jiang Hai wants to go to has nothing to do with these places. He is a rich man, a man who is not brave enough to take risks. Therefore, the place that he wants to go to has to be very safe. So, the place Jiang Hai chose this time was not far from where he lived. Although New York wasn't as small as Boston, it wasn't particularly big either. In some large international cities, there were actually problems in this regard. In some prosperous places, there were often some dilapidated old buildings and the like. It was the same in China. It was not that the local government did not want to demolish these places, but because they could not afford it. As the largest city in the world, the land price in the city center of New York was extremely expensive. Therefore, the most famous Fifth Avenue in New York was actually a small shabby street. If it weren't for the luxury shops on both sides of the street, it would be difficult for people to associate this place with the arrogant name of Fifth Avenue, including the most famous Champs-Élysées in France. Even a long time ago, that street did not have sewers. This was the other side of the prosperous city. The place Jiang Hai wanted to go was also in Manhattan, but it was a relatively remote alley. Even though it was a small alley, there were police cars passing by every 2 or 3 minutes, but the police cars would not stop here. Looking at the cars parked on the side of the road, it was clear that almost all of them were worth less than $300,000. It was fine to drive an ordinary Mercedes-Benz or a BMW, but it was better to park far away, otherwise it would be embarrassing. As for the cars from Japan, he would try to drive them in and see if he would be despised. Jiang Hai's Tomahawk was not the best car, but it was definitely something of the upper class. Jiang Hai drove to the place Moses Adams said. After parking the car, he walked to a closed shop. The name of the shop was Midnight Wild, but there wasn't a single bit of music to be heard from outside. Following Moses Adams' words, Jiang Hai walked to the big iron door and knocked on it a few times. Then, a small iron window opened, revealing a black man's eyes. He was sizing up Jiang Hai. Farwin introduced me here. Feeling Farwin's gaze, Jiang Hai handed over Franklin and said at the same time, Farwin was Moses Adams's alias here. Lawyers like Moses Adams often handle big cases, and it was his duty to invite clients to have fun. Some of the clients in merger cases liked all kinds of things, so he was quite familiar with this kind of place. Hearing that it was an acquaintance and that Jiang Hai gave him a tip of $100, the black man immediately smiled, opened the door, and respectfully invited Jiang Hai in. As soon as the door opened, music came out from inside. But what surprised Jiang Hai was that although the music here was electronic music, it wasn't too loud, but the rhythm was really fast. Jiang Hai didn't like music that was too loud, especially underground rock and the like. It seemed that Moses Adams was still very familiar with Jiang Hai's habits, and the shop he recommended wasn't too lively. After entering the door and passing through a short passage, a slightly dim hall appeared in Jiang Hai's line of sight. The first thing that caught his eye was a huge tea stage in the middle of the hall. Next to the tea stage, there were many small stages. On each of these stages, there was a steel pipe. At this time, on each of these stages, there was a girl standing there, swaying from side to side. Then, according to the reward money given by the guests, they decided to strip to a certain extent. Of course, in the end, she would strip naked, but it also depended on the popularity. If the audience below the stage was no longer interested in her, then she would have to sell more benefits. If they were still interested, then she would have to take it off a little slower. When Jiang Hai came in, it seemed that the first show was already halfway through, and the whole stage was white. Chapter 362. Wow, interesting. Looking at the seductive figures on the stage, Jiang Hai was instantly interested. He came to see these things. He always heard that there were many such clubs in the United States, but this is the first time he has come. Sir, how many? At this moment, a waitress wearing only underwear and a rabbit ear on her head also came over with a smile. It seems that the waiters here are all dressed like this. Just me. Looking at the flowery skin in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a slightly shy smile, I'll arrange a nearby position for you. Is there a type you like? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl also smiled and said. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also glanced at the scene. To be honest, he was a little uncertain. There are a total of 12 stages here. The dancers on each stage are different. The T stage in the middle is used for the big show at 12 o'clock in the evening. Before 12 o'clock, only these 12 stages have performances. 3 of them are black stages, 3 are white stages, 3 are Latino stages, and 3 are Asian stages. Looking at your dress, you should be Asian. Do you want to sit over there and have a look? There are dancers from India performing tonight. Looking at Jiang Hai's somewhat confused look, the waitress also said briskly, Indian performance? That can be watched. Although he doesn't like Indian people, their beauties are still good. This way, please. Hearing Jiang Hai say that he wants to see, the waitress also led Jiang Hai to a stage. The stage here is called a stage, but it is really not big. It is about 2 square meters. Below this high platform, there is a floor dedicated to wine glasses and the like. People sitting here can watch these stages at a close distance. Of course, if you spend enough money, you could get as close as you wanted to. You could even touch her with your hands. However, if the dancer didn't want to, you could just make a move. If you did that, you would be escorted away by the security guards. Whether or not you would be punched before you left depended on how sweet your mouth was. There is no direct transaction here. No one can force these dancers, but if she also likes a guest, it doesn't matter if the two chat privately, and the bar won't care. The waiter led Jiang Hai to a bar where a performance was going on. This bar could seat up to 10 people, and it could seat more if it was crowded. However, in order to avoid any accidents with these hot-blooded people, only 4 seats were arranged. Jiang Hai looked at Jiang Hai, one in the east, south, west, and north. If you bring other friends, you can sit more. When Jiang Hai arrived at the stage, there were already 3 people sitting in the audience. What made Jiang Hai surprised was that there were 2 men and 1 woman. One of them had an unclear relationship with the other. Not only were there men, but there were also women as well. Jiang Hai was surprised. Although Jiang Hai is a little curious, he didn't ask much. After he was directly arranged to a seat, Jiang Hai also looked at the bar above his head. The dancer on the bar is indeed a woman from India. Her skin is slightly dark, but her eyes are too big, even occupying 1/3 of the whole face. Coupled with the eyeliner and eyeshadow, she looks so big. She has a high nose and slightly delicate facial features. She's really not bad. After Jiang Hai sat down, he took out the money that Moses Adams told him to prepare. Here, you have to experience the extravagance of a nouveau riche. So when you give money, you directly throw it or stuff into the other party's clothes. Well, if the other party has clothes, for people who don't have much money and are just here to pass the time, you use $1. Although Jiang Hai is not so rich as to only exchange $100 for a Franklin's, he is not so stingy. These dancers have an unusually high standard. Jiang Hai doesn't think he is handsome enough to make people fall for him, so he still has to use money. So he exchanged 2 stacks of 200 Jacksons, which are $20. Holding them in his hand, he really looks like he is in the right place. Every American bill has a different person printed on it. $1 is the first president of the United States, George Washington. $2 is the second president of the United States, Jefferson. $5 is the 16th president of the United States, Lincoln. $10 is the first secretary of the Treasury, Hamilton. $20 is the 7th president of the United States, Jackson. $50 is the 18th president of the United States, Grant. $100 is the great scientist, Franklin. This guy is most famous for inventing electricity. In elementary school textbooks, this guy flew a kite on a rainy day and was struck by lightning in the end. This is talking about him. Seeing the stack of $20 that Jiang Hai took out, not only does the eyes of the Indian girl on the stage light up, but she, who has no clothes on her upper body, gently lay down. Even the waiter who led Jiang Hai here has eyes shining. "What would you like to drink, sir?" Seeing that Jiang Hai's eyes were fixed on the dancer on the stage, the waiter asked in a low voice. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. He drove. Although drunk driving is not as serious in the United States as it is in China, it is better not to drive when drinking. So he thought for a moment and said to the waiter, "A glass of juice. It's better not to drink when driving." "Wow, I didn't expect you to be a good man. Wait a moment." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the waiter smiled and left. Jiang Hai's eyes were attracted by the person on the stage. When she saw Jiang Hai looking over, the woman worked even harder. She even squatted down in front of Jiang Hai with her legs wide open. Through the thin pants, although he couldn't see anything, it gave Jiang Hai a different feeling. Seeing this, Jiang Hai picked up a $20 bill and threw it on the stage. However, the woman gently used her hips to push the $20 bill down the stage. At the same time, she shook her waist. Her meaning was clear. She wanted Jiang Hai to put in. So this time, Jiang Hai took 2 bills and put them in. Just as Jiang Hai put them in, the woman pulled back. Her pants, which were originally fastened with 2 bags, instantly opened. Jiang Hai saw half of the situation inside with one glance. Jiang Hai couldn't help but stare blankly at this accident. What was going on? He didn't do it on purpose. He wouldn't be kicked out, right? Moses Adams had told him on the phone that this wasn't allowed. Of course, there was another possibility, and that was that the dancer was willing to do it. Seeing Jiang Hai's adorable look, the third sister giggled as she danced on the side. Not only did she not stop, scream, or call security as Jiang Hai imagined, she even deliberately turned in another direction. Seeing this, Jiang Hai roughly understood that she did on purpose. So, Jiang Hai didn't say anything. He picked up another $20 bill and stuffed it in. Sure enough, as soon as Jiang Hai put it in, she pulled back again, and this time her pants slid down. In front of Jiang Hai, in a position that any normal man would be very excited to see, she kept drawing circles in front of Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, the people at the 2 nearby tables who had been watching happily couldn't help but turn and leave. They knew that when Jiang Hai tossed out $40 or $40, it would be time for them to retreat. One of the 2 groups of people had a battle to fight, and the other didn't look like someone who would spend hundreds of dollars for fun. Since Jiang Hai, this local tyrant, had come, naturally, there was nothing for them to do. They were not allowed to cause trouble, nor were they allowed to force others. Instead of looking at buttocks, they might as well go and look at other tables. Seeing that the others had left, the girl started dancing even harder. She even pulled open her pants so that Jiang Hai could see what was inside. It was Jiang Hai's first time seeing such a scene. Jiang Hai wasn't stingy. He tossed the $20 to the girl one by one, which made her dance even crazier. It must be noted that it wasn't easy for people of color to make a living in the United States. For dancers like her, it was better for white people because they had a wide audience. Even if they only earned $1 a day, they could earn more than $200 a day. Excluding the time they had a rest, they could earn $4,000 a month. Black people had their own fixed group, and their income was slightly lower. They could earn about $3,000 a month. Latin Americans could be considered to be on the same continent as North Americans, and their income wasn't bad either. The most miserable ones were those from Asia, whose audience was too small. The Chinese were too conservative. So many decent men rarely came here. For example, before Jiang Hai came, she had only earned $50 in total when her performance was almost over. Jiang Hai, on the other hand, had thrown in $80 as soon as he arrived. Before she knew it, he had already earned more than $200. She had already earned more than the white dancers today. How could she not work hard? The more she looked at Jiang Hai, the more she liked him. "Sir, your orange juice." Just then, the waitress came over with a glass of orange juice. "Thank you." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai responded with a smile. He then picked up 2 $20 and gave them to her. This glass of orange juice was about $3. Jiang Hai was naturally very generous to give her $40. Looking at Jiang Hai, the waitress's eyes lit up, but she didn't take the money. Instead, she deliberately bent down to show Jiang Hai her breasts, which were a little out of shape because of the squeezing of her top, and gestured for him to put the money in. Jiang Hai wouldn't give up such good benefits. Naturally, he went along with her wishes. The smooth and soft feeling was indeed not bad. After staying in the glass for about a minute, Jiang Hai finally pulled his hand out. The girl didn't stand on ceremony. She just put the orange juice in front of Jiang Hai, and then took the initiative to sit in Jiang Hai's arms. As soon as she sat in, Jiang Hai's face instantly turned red because she was sitting in a very awkward position. Chapter 363. It seems that you don't come here often. Jiang Hai had watched the performance for a long time. He was a normal man. Naturally, after watching the performance, he had the reaction of some men. When she sat down, she just happened to sit there. However, the waitress here, although not a professional, was not a rookie. She didn't care. She deliberately helped Jiang Hai to a comfortable position through his pants before sitting down again. With one hand on the bar in front of her, the other hand had already grabbed Jiang Hai's hand and quietly stuffed it into her shirt. It seemed that this benefit was a bit too much. Cough. It's my first time here. Although he was a little worried about being banned, Jiang Hai was now an arrow on the bow. There was nothing to say. He just smiled awkwardly and said to the waitress, "If you come here to play, you have to be more open, right? Come on, eat more. Let our new Mister see your unique skills." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the waitress also picked up Jiang Hai's other hand and put it in. At the same time, she said to the third female sister on the stage. Originally, this dancer was a little annoyed with the waitress who came to steal his work. Now that he heard her work, he danced even more vigorously. At the same time, his vital position was getting closer and closer to Jiang Hai and the waitress. When the waitress saw this scene, she took the initiative to stretch out her hand and stirred there. The fingers that were stirred up were also put in her mouth. Looking at this scene in front of him, Jiang Hai felt that at this time, he was a character in a cartoon that he saw when he was young. The third baby in the Calabash Brothers was really hard from head to toe. Feeling that Jiang Hai was getting more and more into the mood, the waitress here also smiled and said, "I'll help you. Go outside." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai froze for a moment. Indeed, he needed to solve it now. No, it's too troublesome to go outside. The toilet is probably already full of people now. We'll just stay here. Anyway, there's no one else here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the waitress whispered. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai was a little stunned. There's no one else here? There are almost 100 people next to them. Is this no one else? Not far away, there's one in front of them. But the waitress didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to refuse. She stood up gently, and then released Jiang Hai with her hands. After putting his pants aside, she sat down. Maybe this woman really didn't know Jiang Hai's strength. She went straight to the end. Even a white woman like her couldn't help but groan. Her whole body trembled. As for the dancers on the stage, they couldn't help but stop. "Don't stop, continue." Raising her head, the waitress said to the dancer in front of her, and she also moved. At the same time, her two hands were in front of Jiang Hai, constantly playing with the dancer. This scene was really exciting for Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai, who usually has an hour of combat power, was finished in 20 minutes this time. As Jiang Hai shook, the waitress also shook. After about a minute, she slowly stood up. But as soon as she stood up, she felt that something leaked out. She immediately looked back and found that Jiang Hai's pants were dirty. "I'm really sorry." Looking at Jiang Hai's dirty pants, the waitress immediately turned back and whispered, "It's okay, I'll wash it." Hearing the waitress' words, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. This scene was really something he had never experienced. Seeing that the waitress was about to leave, Jiang Hai also stood up and took out about half of the money from the stack of money and handed it to the waitress. "I only want this." However, the waitress only counted 10 from it and then left as if nothing had happened. Looking at the leaving waitress, the secretion in Jiang Hai's mind was relieved. "Can I come to you later?" At this moment, the dance music here was also over. After the dancer got off the stage, she whispered to Jiang Hai. Needless to say, he understood what she meant. Of course. Jiang Hai listened to her words and nodded. He hasn't tried this kind of exotic feeling yet. Hearing that Jiang Hai agreed, the dancer smiled and touched Jiang Hai, then turned back to the backstage. She had to clean up quickly so that she could come out to find Jiang Hai. First, it was for money, and second, it was because of the scene just now, which made her have some ideas. Seeing that there was no one on the stage, Jiang Hai also thought about it and decided to go to the bathroom to wash first. However, when he arrived at the bathroom, he found that it was not peaceful inside. Almost every cubicle was filled with sounds that made people daydream. Outside these cubicles, there were many men and women, but at this time, they were still restraining themselves. They were just hugging and kissing or touching with their hands. They had not really started yet. Jiang Hai looked at this scene, and the embarrassment on his face was really thick. He walked to the sink and washed his pants. After that, Jiang Hai left the bathroom. Fortunately, he was wearing dark pants today. Otherwise, it would be even more embarrassing. When he came out, he found that a group of people just came in. Looking at this group of people, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. Because he knew this group of people, there were a total of 11 people in this group. In addition to the 4 bodyguards, there were 7 women. The leader was a woman wearing men's clothes. If Jiang Hai was not mistaken, this woman seemed to be Prawalton. At this time, the big sister in Jiang Hai's eyes changed into a different dress from her usual dress. Her long hair was also tied up by her. She wore a slightly loose, gender-neutral suit with a white shirt inside. The suit really outlined her figure. Beside her, there were 6 women dressed in women's clothes. Jiang Hai didn't know 5 of them. There were 2 Caucasians, 2 Latin Americans, and 1 Asian girl, but Jiang Hai knew the other person. It was Selena Gomez who went to his place to play and helped him. Did they also come here to play? Thinking of this, Jiang Hai walked over and was ready to say hello, but as soon as he walked over, a bodyguard stopped him. Seeing the bodyguard's action, Jiang Hai couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He himself was looking for a bodyguard. Just as Jiang Hai wanted to explain that he knew Walton, and Selena Gomez had already looked over. When they saw that it was Jiang Hai, a look of surprise flashed on their faces. "Jiang, why are you here?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Walton said with some surprise. "Oh, I came to New York to see a friend off. I have nothing to do at night, so I came to play. What about you? What's the situation?" Hearing that Walton knew Jiang Hai, the bodyguard who was originally blocking Jiang Hai took a step back. In fact, he also knew Jiang Hai, but without Walton's permission, he couldn't let Jiang Hai get in touch with his employer. "I also came here to play. Well, the next show is about to start. I have to accompany my friend. Your bill tonight is on me. Have fun." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Walton said with a smile, "You can forget about it. I drove here and I don't drink. I have already paid for a glass of orange juice." Waving his hand at Walton, Jiang Hai smiled and walked back to his seat. Walton also chuckled and sat in front of a white dancer's stage. The owner of the bar here had already prepared the place. She was a big customer, so he had to curry favor with her. When Jiang Hai returned to his seat, the original Indian dancer had already changed her clothes and was waiting for him. "Shall we go now, or watch a little longer?" Seeing Jiang Hai coming, the woman took the initiative to greet him and held Jiang Hai's arm with a smile. She had already earned more than $300 from dancing just now. Most of it was Jiang Hai's, so she could leave early tonight. As for going out with Jiang Hai later, she had decided to do it for free. Of course, if Jiang Hai has some other requirements, she may charge some extra fees. But it seems that Jiang Hai doesn't seem to be that kind of pervert, so her safety can still be guaranteed. "Let's watch a little longer." Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai just had fun, so he was not in a hurry, so he sat down first. As soon as he sat down, the girl took the initiative to sit on Jiang Hai like the waitress just now. And Jiang Hai also followed the train of thought just now, placing his hands one up and one down. At this time, the music sounded and another show began. This time, the woman in front of Jiang Hai was also an Asian. However, her appearance was similar to that of the Chinese people. Unlike the woman in his arms, who had obvious foreign characteristics, this person didn't seem to be from another country. Of course, this didn't mean that this woman was from Huaxia, Japan, or Korea. It was also possible, but Jiang Hai guessed wrong. Just as Jiang Hai was curious about the beauty's identity, the dancer in his arms had already started to talk. This is Ruan Kong, a southern Yu person, and the most flexible one here. Hearing her words, the dancer had already moved. Indeed, this woman's flexibility was indeed strong. The first move was to bend down, letting Jiang Hai look at her upper body first, then at her lower body. Although it was all clothes, it was still very interesting. Seeing this, Jiang Hai immediately began to tip. After all, watching a show was like reading a novel. If it was enjoyable, naturally he would tip. Seeing Jiang Hai throwing $20 on the stage, the girl was also ecstatic. She knew that this time, she met a rich man, so she immediately danced even harder. Among the 12 stages, she was the first one to be naked. Seeing this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but exclaim, "This is really a place to stimulate hormones." Chapter 364. Shall we go? Looking at the performance on the stage, which was getting more and more intense, Jiang Hai, who had just finished his business, asked. Unknowingly, Jiang Hai felt something again. The girl who had been sitting close to Jiang Hai's chest naturally felt the difference in Jiang Hai. She smiled and asked Jiang Hai. At the same time, she put her hand on his chest. Okay. Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai didn't feel any burden. In any case, he came here to have fun. It was impossible for him to have any other interactions with this girl. This was the reason why he came here. So now that the girl mentioned it, Jiang Hai smiled and said. At the same time, he put the orange juice in his hand on the table. After standing up, he turned around and was about to leave with the girl. The waiter, just now, was just a fast food customer. Now, Jiang Hai was about to have a proper meal, but just as Jiang Hai and the girl were about to leave, they were stopped by the woman behind them. Hey, can you take me with you? Looking back, Jiang Hai looked at the girl behind him who was about to finish her performance. He was a little surprised. He only heard about it before, but it was the first time he encountered such a thing. He couldn't help but look at the girl beside him. This girl naturally didn't care. After all, Jiang Hai was the investor, so she just smiled and shrugged. Okay, in line with the principle of fun, everyone should look for fun together. Jiang Hai waved to the Southern Yu girl on the stage. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl excitedly jumped up and down. That majestic thing couldn't help but shake up and down violently. Jiang Hai's eyes almost popped out of his head. Fortunately, the girl only jumped a little, then quickly put on her clothes. She didn't go back to the back to change her clothes. She directly put on her costume and left with Jiang Hai, one on his left and one on his right. There was no other way. The income of dancing here for a day was not as much as the reward Jiang Hai gave just now. It was said that girls love tickets. Girls nowadays loved money the most. Since Jiang Hai was so willing to spend money, who else could she spend it with but him? For the initiative of the two girls, Jiang Hai naturally would not refuse. One on the left and one on the right. He took them away from here. He went straight into his car. Although this was a small alley, it was still considered a public street. Under the guidance of the two girls, Jiang Hai circled to the back of the alley, where it was much darker. Although it was dark, there were many cars here, and many of them were shaking violently. Jiang Hai was no stranger to this kind of shaking. At this time, he was even more anxious. After stopping at a dark place, Jiang Hai jumped from the driver's seat to the back seat. Along with a few exclamations of laughter, Jiang Hai's shield also began to shake unconsciously. You have to relax when you come out to play. Don't always be tense. It's not good for you. Come on, have a drink. Regardless of Jiang Hai's situation, on the other side of the stage, as the performance approached the end, Prawalton also turned her eyes from the dancers on the stage to Selena Gomez next to her and said to her with a chuckle. Beside her, the other 5 women had already begun to dance to the music. Their eyes wandered between Prawalton and the dancers on the stage from time to time. As for their gazes, Prawalton didn't care. Her attention was now more focused on Selena Gomez next to her. No, Sister Prawalton, I really can't drink. I have to protect my vocal cords. Hearing Prawalton's words, Selena Gomez shook her head and politely refused. Don't say such useless words. Don't forget where we met. Wine, it's not like you don't drink. Come on, drink it. However, her words didn't make Prawalton back off. Instead, she deliberately moved closer to her and brought the wine to her mouth. Needless to say, if Selena Gomez didn't drink, she would force it. Sister Prawalton, I really don't drink. Looking at Prawalton's actions, Selena Gomez was shocked. She didn't expect this sister to be so fierce. She didn't drink, but she dared to force her to drink. Come on, just one glass. Seeing that she was still dodging, Prawalton couldn't help but use a little more force. As soon as she used force, Selena Gomez also began to use force. In an instant, the wine glass that was still balanced fell down in an instant. Wah! The wine in the glass was instantly poured on Selena Gomez. The women who were watching the performance next to them also looked at their sides in an instant. When they found out that it was wine, everyone was stunned and looked at Selena Gomez and Prawalton. For a moment, the whole scene was extremely awkward. Prawalton took the wine glass away first and then drank it all. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. This time it's really troublesome. Let's go back and change clothes. Looking at Selena Gomez in front of her, Prawalton said with regret, Oh, it's nothing. I have a waterproof layer in the middle of my clothes. I'll go inside and wipe it. Originally, Selena Gomez wasn't a person who played tricks, especially when she knew how powerful the sister next to her was. It may take some means to help her, but it's easy to destroy her. Moreover, the relationship between them was originally very close, but this kind of closeness was somewhat unbearable for Selena Gomez. However, no matter what, they were still good friends. Looking at the regretful look on Selena's face, it was hard for Selena Gomez to blame her. Therefore, after saying that, she got up and went to the bathroom to wash up. Looking at Selena Gomez, who got up, the smile and panic on Prawalton's face gradually disappeared. Master, I don't understand. Why are you so concerned about her? Just tie her up or hit her. There's no way she won't agree. Seeing that Selena Gomez had left, a woman on the other side took the initiative to approach her and asked curiously, What are you talking about? What do you know? Only this way is more interesting. Hearing the woman's words, Prawalton couldn't help but chuckle, then grabbed her hair with her hand, kissed her lips heavily, raised her head, and said slowly. Then, she snapped her fingers, and the bodyguard next to her led a waiter that they had already negotiated with over to them. And Prawalton didn't look at the waiter, just gave him a Franklin and a red pill. For this kind of thing, the bartender here was not surprised, and he also knew what to do. After receiving the money and medicine, the bartender respectfully nodded and left, while Prawalton continued to watch the performance on the stage. As for Selena Gomez at this time, she had unknowingly walked out of the bathroom. Her face was also flushed, although the women's bathroom was not like the men's bathroom. There was an inexplicable atmosphere. But in fact, there was also such a performance in the women's bathroom, but it was relatively rare. Some men would more or less consider this problem, and they wouldn't easily enter the women's bathroom, but many women would enter the men's bathroom. But it didn't mean that no one would enter. So when she was wiping her clothes, a lot of voices entered her ears, and some people even looked at her with eyes full of desire. She didn't know if she was recognized, but this made it difficult for her to stay here. So after a simple wipe, she returned to the table. Seeing Selena Gomez walk back, Prawalton also smiled. Come, order a drink. Since you don't want to drink, then have a drink. Looking at Selena Gomez, Prawalton didn't force her to drink this time, but spoke to her with a smile. Hearing Prawalton's words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. In her opinion, if she drank too much, it would be bad. Drink should be fine. So she waved to the waiter in the distance, then ordered a cup of Long Island iced tea. This was a type of cocktail. Cocktails were made when alcohol was banned in the United States. Originally, it didn't contain alcohol, but later it was no longer banned. It was divided into two types, one without alcohol and one with alcohol. Selena Gomez ordered the one without alcohol. Soon, A cocktail appeared in front of her. She picked up the glass in front of her and drank gently. She had to admit that not only was the performance in this bar great, but of course for Selena Gomez, it was just a kind of adjustment. If Perwalton didn't want to come, she wouldn't have come. The performance didn't attract her, but the drink was really good. Seeing Selena Gomez drink up the Long Island iced tea in front of her, Perwalton also smiled. She knew that Selena Gomez would not be able to escape her clutches tonight. When she smiled, Selena Gomez just turned her head and saw this scene. As soon as she saw this smile, she didn't know why, but her heart skipped a beat. She felt that the food might be ruined. She began to think carefully about whether there was anything wrong with her tonight, but she couldn't think of anything. At this moment, she suddenly felt her heart beat suddenly, and then her consciousness began to fade, but her body was very hot. At this moment, she knew that she had unknowingly fallen into a trap. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Then let's go home. Looking at Selena Gomez's appearance, Perwalton couldn't help laughing. She was waiting for this moment, and now she was a little anxious. Chapter 365. Are you feeling unwell? Let's go home. Looking at Selena Gomez's dazed eyes, Perwalton couldn't help but smile. After waiting for so long, it was finally time to reap the rewards. She believed that Selena Gomez would definitely fall in love with her. After all, she was mesmerized by the beauty in the mirror. No, thank you, I need to go to the bathroom. Feeling Perwalton's burning gaze, Selena Gomez couldn't help but stand up immediately. She didn't understand what was going on, and now she just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, because she didn't know when the drug would take effect. If she didn't leave by then, she would really fall into her hands. Then I'll go with you. Seeing that Selena could still stand up, Perwalton also stood up with a smile. It seemed that these girls who practiced dancing and singing were indeed in good physical condition. Even after being hit by a pill, they still didn't fall. Amazing. No need. Shaking her head, Selena Gomez quickly walked to the bathroom. We're all women, don't worry about it. We should help each other. However, Perwalton didn't give up so easily. After standing up, she forced herself to follow Selena to the bathroom. Fortunately, Selena's consciousness was still intact. When she entered the bathroom door, she locked it. Seeing that Selena locked the door, Perwalton couldn't help but raise her hand and put it down again. If she were to break down the door here, it would easily attract attention. By then, not only would Selena's reputation be ruined, her own reputation would also be affected. After all, to a certain extent, she was not only representing herself, but also the family behind her. So she just stopped here, but she gave her 4 bodyguards a look. 2 of them quickly left this place to prevent Selena from escaping, but sometimes she couldn't prevent it. After entering the bathroom, Selena Gomez ran directly to the sink, turned on the tap, and began to dig her throat, trying to spit out what she drank. Indeed, she spat it out, but this drug was instantaneous. This kind of drug was not too rare in the upper class of the United States, and it was extremely expensive. The main ingredient of this drug was blood orchid, a plant only produced on Kalimantan Island. After a man ate it, his combat power would double. After a woman ate it, she would also fall into a state of madness. It was a prop for many rich people to arouse their interest. Of course, the price was also very high. 1 blood orchid cost $5 million. Although Selena Gomez spat out most of the Long Island iced tea, her stomach still absorbed part of it. Just this part alone was enough. Leaning on the sink, Selena Gomez felt her head getting dizzier and her body getting hotter and hotter. She gritted her teeth and saw a row of small windows on the wall behind the bathroom that served as ventilation. She had practiced dancing for many years, and with her slender body, she could barely squeeze through. Thinking of this, she put her head under the tap and kept washing it. The cold water poured on her head, and her consciousness temporarily returned to her body. Then, taking advantage of her sobriety, she climbed to the row of windows in a few steps, ignoring the startled mandarin ducks around her. He stretched his head and squeezed his body out of the small window with great effort. Selena, Selena, are you okay? Hearing the rustling sound inside, Prawalton, who had been listening outside, was a little anxious. He couldn't help but knock on the door and ask inside. But after waiting for a while, no sound came back. So, Prawalton was also a little anxious. He gave a look to his men. Then, one of his bodyguards had already taken the key from the staff here and directly opened the door of the bathroom. Just as the door opened, Prawalton happened to see Selena Gomez jump out of the window. Who is it? Go after her. Seeing the duck in his hand fly away, Prawalton couldn't just let it go. After speaking to the two bodyguards behind him, these people quickly chased out. At the same time, they informed the two bodyguards outside to go around the back alley at the first time. At this time, when Selena Gomez fell from the window, she just happened to fall on a car parked here. With a bang, the pair of wild mandarin ducks in the car were shocked. Then the man immediately put on his clothes and pants. Fortunately, it was late spring, so the temperature here wasn't low. He only had a jacket and a pair of pants. If it was winter, it would be troublesome. After putting on his clothes, the man ran out immediately. When he saw someone fall on the roof of his car, he couldn't help but curse. Oh, who is it? F***CK, son of bitch. Do you want to die? My car. I'm sorry. At this time, Selena Gomez was not in the mood to care about his problem. She jumped out of the car, awkwardly. After saying that, she wanted to leave, but she was caught by the man. You want to leave with just an apology? You think too highly of yourself. If you don't pay for my car today, don't think about leaving. Pulling Selena Gomez's arm, the man shouted loudly. Under his pull, her wet hair was thrown to the side, and her face appeared in front of him. Selena Gomez. Although she was not a top superstar, her relationship with Justin Bieber was quite popular in the United States and Canada. Most Americans actually knew her face. They might not have listened to her music, but they were familiar with her face. Obviously, this man also recognized her. Hey, if you don't want to pay for my car, then accompany me for a night. I'll pay for the fare. Looking at the delicate little face in front of him, the man said a little obscenely. Then he wanted to take Selena Gomez into the car, but Selena Gomez would not let him do as he wished. She used all her strength in her high heels and stepped heavily on the man's foot, who did not have time to put on his shoes. The instant pain in his foot forced the man to let go of her. She also took this opportunity to run forward awkwardly, but unfortunately, she really did not have the strength. Although the kick was painful, it did not make the man give up. After screaming in pain twice, he limped after her. Now, he was angry and anxious, but compared to playing with Selena in a while, these were not a problem. Feeling that the man behind her was chasing her again, Selena wanted to run faster, but she really could not speed up. In the end, in a hurry, her foot slipped and she fell again, but this time, she was lucky to fall on the front cover of a car. With a bang, it also startled the three people in the back of the car. When the three of them were startled and got up to look, the man among the three of them recognized the person lying on the cover of the car at a glance. Selena Gomez? The man could be said to be very familiar with this woman, because this man was none other than Jiang Hai. After Jiang Hai brought the two girls out, he started in his car. With Jiang Hai's strong fighting power, the time naturally would not be short, especially when he was facing attacks from two sides at the same time. It was precisely because he did not leave that Jiang Hai was able to catch up. He and Selena Gomez could be said to be friends. Not only had she been to Jiang Hai's manor to play, but Jiang Hai had always remembered that she had helped him at the New York Beef Show. Jiang Hai was a person who knew how to repay kindness, so he immediately put on his clothes and got out of the car. As soon as he got out of the car, he saw a man limping over to Selena Gomez. This has nothing to do with you. Get lost. Stupid bitch. How dare you step on me? When a man came over, he shouted at Jiang Hai and then grabbed Selena's hair, wanted to drag her away. What a joke. You want to touch his friend in front of Jiang Hai. At that moment, Jiang Hai did not say anything and kicked him. The man did not expect Jiang Hai to be so fast and start the fight without saying a word. This gave him no time to react, and he was kicked in the chest by Jiang Hai. The man flew for about 5 meters in the air before landing on another car. This time, he fell much harder than when Selena stepped on his car. The entire rear windshield was shattered, and the man and woman who were fighting inside were shocked. The man immediately put on his clothes and ran out to see what was going on. At this time, Jiang Hai had already arrived in front of Selena and helped her up. "What's going on?" Looking at Selena Gomez, who seemed to be drunk, but there was no smell of alcohol on her body, Jiang Hai was a little confused. He looked at her with a puzzled face and asked. Hearing Jiang Hai's voice, Selena Gomez also woke up a little. When she saw that it was Jiang Hai, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said intermittently, "Hurry, let's go." After that, her head tilted. Although she didn't faint, she had no strength to run or speak. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai frowned, then put her in the back seat, said to the two girls to take care of her, and then was ready to leave. But before he left, two men in black chased after him. Jiang Hai remembered these two men. They were Walton's bodyguards. These two men were ordered to bring Selena Gomez back, but they just saw Jiang Hai carrying her into the car, which made them very unhappy. Now seeing that Jiang Hai was about to drive away, the two men here looked at each other, and one of them kicked him without saying a word. Chapter 366. It was dark now, and it was very late. This was a place for guests who wanted to have fun. Therefore, there were no streetlights here. The two bodyguards didn't know who Jiang Hai was, and Jiang Hai didn't know who they were either. Now, Jiang Hai just regarded them as people who came to steal Selena Gomez. In fact, they regarded Jiang Hai as someone who came to pick up the leftovers. There was nothing to say between the two sides. Let's fight. Although it was very dark now, Jiang Hai wasn't joking. He naturally felt the wind behind his head. He didn't even close the door. He directly turned around and kicked the bodyguard's leg heavily. When the two legs collided, the huge impact caused the bodyguard who was sneak attacking from behind to be unable to help but throw his leg back. He almost fell down. Although the bodyguards of Walton were all experienced, in terms of skills, perhaps Bell wasn't as good as these people. After all, these people also retired from the world's top forces. Some were not even national organizations, but mercenaries. There were more opportunities to fight between life and death. Therefore, their combat effectiveness was also stronger. If they fought with Jiang Hai, no one knew the result. But if they fought so hard, it was impossible for them to be Jiang Hai's opponent. With a bang, the bodyguard's foot fell to the ground again. He felt that his leg was numb. But fortunately, this blow made Jiang Hai unable to get in the car easily. At this time, another bodyguard caught up. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of him, he immediately waved his fist directly. Compared to the first bodyguard, the second bodyguard was a black man. The night gave him the best cover, but Jiang Hai still couldn't see in the dark. However, it didn't prevent him from perceiving the existence of this guy. He felt this guy's fist coming towards him. Whoosh! Jiang Hai also directly punched the man's chest, but the man's reaction was faster. In fact, the punch just now was just a feint. He had already calculated Jiang Hai's movements. Now, his knee was also aimed at Jiang Hai. When he felt the knee coming, Jiang Hai was actually stunned for a moment, because at this time, it was easy for him to dodge this attack. But his attack was about to end. Now, here, Jiang Hai was afraid that a long delay would lead to trouble. After all, he didn't know who drugged Selena Gomez. If these people were from the local Gray Gang, and he took too long, the other party's reinforcements would come, and it would be troublesome. Jiang Hai still couldn't block a bullet. So now, he could only choose to end the battle quickly. At the same time that he forcibly took the knee, Jiang Hai also punched the man's chest. Fist against knee, even a fool would know which side was stronger. In the black man's eyes, he definitely had the upper hand in this exchange. But he didn't expect that this was not a fair fight. His knee did hurt Jiang Hai, but the weight of Jiang Hai's fist was not something he could withstand. In an instant, he punched out and directly sent the black man flying. If he went to do an X-ray at this time, he would find that some of his ribs were already broken. At the same time, his body flew back and smashed into a trash can with a crash. The things inside were smashed everywhere. At the same time, he temporarily lost the ability to fight. At the very least, he needed to rest for a while. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jiang Hai flashed in front of another bodyguard. This bodyguard had already overcome the soreness in his legs when his companions came over. He rushed over directly. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, this person didn't say anything and directly threw a heavy punch at Jiang Hai. Seeing that this person's heavy punch was about to hit Jiang Hai suddenly squatted and then grabbed the person's arm with both hands. Then he twisted his body. In the person's extremely surprised eyes, Jiang Hai's body burst out with a huge force. He directly swung the person up and slammed him heavily on the ground. With this swing, the person's arm was officially dislocated. However, Jiang Hai would not let him go easily. He went up and kicked the person's head. This blow was not like the one in the martial arts movies where one blow could knock people out, but also made him confused. At least, he would not trouble Jiang Hai for the time being. Seeing that these two people were temporarily solved, Jiang Hai also flashed and went to the car. Then, he stepped on the accelerator and rushed out of the alley. At this time, the black man who fell on the trash can also got up. He hurriedly ran a few steps and ran out of the alley. He didn't dare to shoot on the street, so he could only watch Jiang Hai's car go away. He immediately reported the situation here to the headset. "Boss, I'm sorry. Miss Gomez was taken away." Hearing the report here, a bodyguard immediately ran to Prawalton, who had already run to the door after hearing the news, and whispered. Hearing his words, Prawalton directly slapped him. Although he could easily dodge, he didn't, and there was no trace of anger in his eyes. This matter was indeed their responsibility. Moreover, Prawalton was not someone they could afford to offend. Looking at the man's silent appearance, Prawalton snorted and said, "Trash. Yes, the person who took Miss Gomez away is a master, and the car he drove is a battle shield if I'm not mistaken." Hearing the word trash, the man didn't refute. Instead, he agreed. Then, he talked about the news sent by the black man. "Battle shield? Check it for me and see who the car belongs to." Hearing this man's words, Prawalton's eyes had a trace of doubt. For a car like the battle shield, in fact, it was not very common in the United States. It was not that Americans could not afford it, but that Americans were not willing to drive such a car. In the United States, successful people basically drove sedans, while young people and rich people drove sports cars. No matter how good the pickup truck was except for some modified cars, it was also driven by farmers. SUVs, even the best ones, were usually not driven by people. This was different from the domestic car culture. In China, the most important thing was that cars were expensive. The type of car, except for engineering vehicles, was not too important. But in the United States, what kind of car did was very particular. If this person came here to visit the club and also drove an SUV, if this person was not a tiger, then he really liked it. And she just happened to know such a person, and she saw this guy tonight. It can't be that guy. Squinting her eyes, Prawalton's heart, which was originally worried about Gomez's safety, was a little relieved. If it was that guy driving such a car and having such good skills, it would make sense. But when she thought of Selena Gomez's situation now, her eyes couldn't help but narrow again. If this was the case, then it would be troublesome. So she took out her phone, looked at the familiar number on it, and dialed it. But unfortunately, the phone was connected, but no one answered, which made her feel more and more crisis. "Immediately check for me, where Jiang Hai lives in New York." Without hanging up the phone, Prawalton said to the bodyguard beside her. After listening to her, the bodyguard nodded, then immediately left and went to the side to make a call. As for Jiang Hai at this time, he did not return to the presidential suite he rented. Of course, he did not hear the phone ring, because the phone was in his coat pocket, and his coat had been thrown in the back seat. It had been stuffed into the sofa cushion because of the fight just now. If the car was very quiet at this time, it would be fine, but the situation now was not good, because after Selena got in the car, although the car was driving, she was almost unconscious. She just subconsciously felt that she was hot, and then she tore her clothes. Coupled with the original smell in the car, it seemed that the poison in her body was triggered faster. When Jiang Hai got in the car and drove out of the alley, she had already taken off all the clothes outside. At this time, she was tearing her vest. The two women who came up with Jiang Hai were trying to hold her down, but the effect was not very good. From the rearview mirror, Jiang Hai also saw the situation here and could not help but ask in surprise, "What's wrong with her? She should have been drugged with that kind of drug." With a strange, monotonous tone, the girl from India could not help but feel a little puzzled. Living in such places for years, they had long been used to these kinds of things. This kind of thing was not uncommon in nightclubs. That kind of drug. What should we do? Hearing the two women's words, Jiang Hai could not help but be stunned for a moment. There was such a thing? After checking Selena's situation, the girl from Southview thought for a moment and said, "It's not a big problem. She should have been drugged with a very high-level drug. It won't make her delirious, so as long as she's satisfied, the poison should be detoxified. Then I'll have to trouble you. This is my friend. Use your fingers and tongues to help her. I'll pay you later." There was no way to talk about help with these two girls, only benefits. We may not be able to help her because she was drugged with a very high-level drug. Unless it's done in one go, it will last for a long time. After hesitating for a moment, although dollar was very good, they could not earn it. Then what should we do? Hearing the two women's words, Jiang Hai could not help but panic a little. He still owed them a favor. "Aren't you friends? Yours should be fine." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl from Southview said with a smile, "Yeah, your model number, it should be fine." Hearing the girl from Southview's words, the third girl also said with a smile, "Don't joke around. We're really friends, not that kind of relationship." Shaking his head, Jiang Hai really did not think about it. She was drugged with a very high-level drug. Although it won't hurt her brain, if she stays in this state for a long time, it will still be a great burden on her body. Otherwise, she will have to go to the hospital. Hearing that Jiang Hai really did not want to take advantage of her, the girl from Southview suggested. Chapter 367. No, we can't go to the hospital. But who knew that when she heard about going to the hospital, Selena, who was already in a state of madness, actually sobered up a little and said loudly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai can also understand her concerns. After all, she's a public figure. If she goes to the hospital and is discovered, then it is really hard to explain. If she goes to that kind of club and is drugged, not only will she suffer, but it is also possible that Prawalton, that club, and himself will suffer. But if she doesn't go to the hospital, will she continue to be like this? Jiang Hai can't help but have a headache at this time. There's a good hotel in front. Don't hesitate. Let's go. Seeing Jiang Hai's somewhat hesitant look, the third sister here thought that Jiang Hai didn't want to let go of this opportunity, so he didn't take her to the hospital. She rolled her eyes. In this case, she will help Jiang Hai to get off the donkey. Under her command, Jiang Hai came to a motel. As soon as the car was parked, the third sister here had already gone to get a room, leaving the Southern girl and Jiang Hai. She took Selena Gomez in. When they went in, they found that the third sister only got a big room. Originally, Jiang Hai was still hesitating. He was going to put her in and leave for another room. But just when he threw Selena Gomez on the bed, she suddenly jumped up and hugged Jiang Hai in an instant. "Help me." She opened her somewhat blurred eyes. She also heard the conversation between Jiang Hai and the two women just now. She knew that Jiang Hai was the only one who could help her get rid of this annoying feeling. I can't help it. Feeling as if he wants to melt into her body, Jiang Hai said with some hesitation. "You can do it. I don't hate you." It's not love, but Jiang Hai knows that this is the truth. The relationship between him and Selena Gomez is at the level of not hating. For Selena Gomez, who must do this now, rather than giving herself to others, it is better to give herself to Jiang Hai, who she doesn't hate, and it will be easier to end it. After her voice fell, Selena's mouth had already kissed Jiang Hai's lips. Feeling her passion, Jiang Hai seemed to be in a daze at this moment. Looking at the two people in front of him, the two women who brought them in also smiled and were about to leave. But before they left, Jiang Hai waved his hand and told them not to be in a hurry to leave. While dealing with Selena, Jiang Hai also took out the rest of the money he exchanged. Jiang Hai exchanged a total of $220 bills. He spent about 60 bills tonight and now had about 140 left. Jiang Hai took them all out and handed them to the two women. The two women didn't refuse. Although they didn't come out for Jiang Hai's money, if Jiang Hai wanted to give them money, they wouldn't refuse. After leaving the key to Jiang Hai, they left the room, locked the door, and paid the room fee at the same time. It had to be admitted that sometimes Jiang Hai often found people who were more loyal. After the door was locked, Selena Gomez's last trace of rationality disappeared. A big battle began in this small hotel, just like that. It was already 11 o'clock at night when they entered. It wasn't until 3 o'clock in the morning when the sun rose that they stopped and gradually fell asleep. They didn't know how long they slept. When Jiang Hai felt that someone was looking at him, he woke up from his sleep. As soon as he woke up and opened his eyes, he saw a pair of big eyes looking at him. The owner of these eyes was none other than Selena Gomez, who had an ambiguous relationship with him last night. Seeing Jiang Hai look over, Selena Gomez's face couldn't help but flash a trace of awkwardness and blush. Good morning. Looking at her, Jiang Hai felt that he should say something, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he regretted it. Good morning? What kind of greeting is this? Is this the first thing two people want to say when they get up in the morning? Hey, good morning. Sure enough, hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also smiled and then replied. Then, the two of them fell silent again. Neither of them knew what to say. After a while, Selena Gomez pulled the blanket over herself and sat up. Although she had seen everything she wanted to see last night, she was not going to expose herself this morning. I have to go. I have to go back to practice singing. Listening to her words, Jiang Hai also sat up. Oh, okay. After saying softly, Selena picked up the clothes on the ground with Jiang Hai on her back and put them on. Call me when you have time. I'm leaving first. Standing at the door again, Selena Gomez glanced at Jiang Hai behind her and then said softly, now the relationship between the two is indeed a bit. Looking at Selena Gomez, who closed the door and left, Jiang Hai hesitated and quickly put on his clothes. At this time, he always felt that he should show off a little, so he still chased out. Fortunately, the money for the room had been paid by the two girls last night, so Jiang Hai just returned the key and chased out. When he went downstairs, Selena Gomez had not yet walked out of the parking lot, and Jiang Hai had already started the engine. Where are you going? Let me give you a ride. Opening the door of the passenger seat, Jiang Hai looked at her seriously and said, no need, I'll just take a taxi back. But hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez shook her head and said, now, she and Jiang Hai were really embarrassed. If the two of them were to stay in the same car, no one knew if the atmosphere would freeze. Come on in, I have nothing to do. However, Jiang Hai is not a person who gives up easily. He shook his head and said to Selena Gomez. Hearing Jiang Hai's firm words, Selena bit her lip and nodded. She went to the passenger seat, fastened her seatbelt, and the two set off. Where are you going? Looking at Selena Gomez beside him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. In fact, he knows that it is unlikely for him and her to be together. Let's not talk about other things. The most important thing is that the life Jiang Hai pursues is probably not what she likes. You know, she is a star, a big star. Although she is not a superstar, she is not inferior. It is not an exaggeration to say that she is an A-list star. She is a person who lives in the spotlight. Jiang Hai can't allow his woman to be busy outside all day and only treat him and his home as a place to relax. Jiang Hai doesn't like to be noticed by too many people. Compared with that kind of life, he prefers his current life. But after all, something did happen between him and Selena last night, so it's hard to say. I'm going to the studio in Brooklyn. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also said softly, okay, I'll turn on the navigation. Jiang Hai can't even understand Boston. Oh no, he can't even understand Winthrop, let alone New York. Fortunately, human beings are smart enough to invent navigation, so Jiang Hai won't go in circles. Following the navigation, Jiang Hai soon drove out of the Manhattan area and came to the Brooklyn Bridge. There are three very famous bridges in New York connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn, namely the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and the Williamsburg Bridge. The Statue of Liberty can be seen on the bridge, which is also a view here. Originally, on the bridge, the traffic flow is very large. If there is a traffic accident, there will be a traffic jam. Just like today, Zhang Hai and the others just got on the bridge and they were blocked and the traffic seemed to be tight. Looking at the motionless traffic in the distance, Zhang Hai and Selena Gomez were not in a hurry. But the atmosphere between the two was indeed a bit awkward because since the navigation was turned on, there was only the sound of the navigation in the whole car. Can I call you Selena? After hesitating, Zhang Hai felt that he should say something. Of course, we're friends. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena spoke first. Then, she seemed to have thought of something, and she couldn't help but hesitate. If they were friends, then what happened last night would be hard to say. Oh, we have seen each other many times. Zhang Hai naturally heard the hesitation in her words, but he could only force himself not to hear it and continue to talk to her. At the same time, he seemed to be recalling the number of times he had seen her. Well, there are many times. The first time I saw you was because you stood up for me. Hearing Zhang Hai talk about the past, Selena also chuckled, as if recalling the scene when she first met Zhang Hai. At that time, I didn't know you. I was just unhappy with Justin Bieber. With a shrug, Zhang Hai naturally knew what she meant by standing up for him. It was nothing more than the problem with Justin Bieber. Haha, there are many people who are unhappy with him, but you're the first one who can make him so depressed, that scumbag. Shaking her head, Selena Gomez was interested in Zhang Hai because of her ex-boyfriend. Hey, who hasn't fallen in love with a few wrong people in their life? You'll get used to it. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also said with a smile, You fell in love before? Aren't you married? Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena Gomez also had some understanding of Zhang Hai. It seemed that Zhang Hai's marriage was a wrong marriage. Two people who did not love each other could only suffer together. Hey, I'm an adult. I must have had friends before. Looking at Selena, Zhang Hai waved his hand and said, Have you fallen in love with the wrong person before? Tell me about it. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena was also interested. Chapter 368. Do you really want to hear it? Looking at Selena, who was originally a little lifeless, suddenly so interested in his past, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He thought to himself, why is this guy so curious? In fact, Zhang Hai didn't have any love stories from his past. After he graduated from university, he really didn't have a girlfriend because he was a homebody and had to work. Later, when his conditions were better and he wanted to make friends, his parents had a series of accidents. He didn't have time to be with them. Then he got married to Chi Li in a daze. Everyone knew what happened after that. So, speaking of which, Zhang Hai really didn't seem to have a girlfriend. What he said just now was, firstly, to save face for himself, and secondly, to comfort Selena, who knew that she would be interested. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai was a little confused. As he asked, his mind spun quickly. Yeah, tell me about it. We're friends. Friends should talk about things that friends should talk about. At this time, Selena looked at Zhang Hai and said with a serious face. For the time being, she put last night's unhappiness aside. Then, okay, I'll tell you. Looking at Selena's eager look, Zhang Hai also organized his words. I remember that a long time ago, I fell in love with a girl. We knew each other and fell in love. When we kissed for the first time, just a second before we kissed, she suddenly said, wait a minute. Zhang Hai looked at her serious expression and slowly told the story. When she heard Zhang Hai's words, Selena also looked at Zhang Hai. She also didn't understand why the girl wanted to stop. I was very puzzled at that time. I thought to myself, if you don't want to, you can push me away. What's the meaning of wait a minute? Just when I was puzzled, she took out 3 pieces of candy from her pocket. They were hard candies that children like to eat. One was strawberry flavored, one was apple, and one was lychee flavored. Then she asked me which one I liked. I said I pointed at the lychee flavored one. Before I could ask her why, she ate the candy and then pulled my neck. We kissed just like that. The whole time, there was the taste of lychee. Seeing as she listened seriously, Jiang Hai also slowly said, "What does this mean?" Hearing Jiang Hai's explanation, Selena couldn't help but interrupt him and asked with some doubts. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai nodded and said, "Yes." I was also very puzzled. After we kissed, I asked her what she meant. She told me that life is so long, and she didn't have the confidence to accompany me forever. She could only let me remember that my favorite lychee-flavored food was the taste of her kiss. In the future, whenever I eat lychee-flavored food, I will think of her. Wow, that's a good idea. Hearing Jiang Hai's explanation, Selena also said with a serious face, "Yes." But after graduating from university, she went to another city and we separated. Later, I got married and gradually lost contact with her. My married life wasn't happy, so time couldn't settle down. Finally, one day, I earned the startup capital and was ready to leave the country. Before I left, I couldn't suppress the feelings in my heart anymore. I decided to look for her. Looking at the sky outside, Jiang Hai slowly said without moving, "Yes, you should look for her. This is a great love. Did you find her?" Looking at Jiang Hai's yearning expression, Selena seemed to be immersed in it. But if you looked at her eyes, you would find that she was a little evasive. Although she didn't like Jiang Hai, she was still awake in this man's arms this morning. Now, she was listening to this man's story of his past, and it was quite romantic. Deep in her heart, there were indeed some ripples. I found a lot of people and asked a lot about her. After a long time, I found some news. It said that after graduation, she went to another city and found a good job. After working for a few years, she quit her job and opened a candy store. After working hard, she slowly accumulated some wealth. I also found the location of the candy store. That day, I specially changed into my favorite clothes, bought flowers, and rushed to her store. I finally found her. Looking at the clouds in the sky, Jiang Hai didn't move, as if he was afraid that if he moved too much, tears would fall down his face. Selena also looked at Jiang Hai motionlessly. She wanted to know the end of Jiang Hai's story. When I saw her, the first thing I said was, "Do you still remember the taste of lychee candy?" She told me with tears in her eyes that she had never forgotten the taste of lychee candy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have publicized the store. I was suddenly moved to tears. I then asked her, "Can we start over?" But she shook her head. Although we loved each other, we can't go back. When Jiang Hai said this, Selena's eyes were already red, but the result made her sigh in relief. "Sorry, I didn't know the end of the story would be like this." Looking at Jiang Hai, who had been looking at the sky at a 45-degree angle, Selena Gomez whispered. She really didn't think that Jiang Hai would have such an unforgettable love. But at this moment, Jiang Hai interrupted her, shook his head, and said, "No, you don't have to apologize. Although she didn't accept me, I'm not sad at all." "You're not sad because you see her happy?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena suddenly felt sorry for Jiang Hai. Feeling Selena's gaze, Jiang Hai turned his eyes towards her. In an instant, two bright eyes appeared in Selena's eyes. She originally thought that Jiang Hai was holding back his tears, but now it seems that there aren't even a single tear in his eyes. Just when she was a little confused, Jiang Hai's voice also came. "No, I'm really not sad at all because I made this story up. It seems like it's going to rain. You bastard." After Jiang Hai finished speaking, Selena went up and punched Jiang Hai's arm heavily. "This bastard, how dare he lie to me? What touching, romantic love story. This guy actually made it up." She originally thought that he was looking at the sky at a 45-degree angle to hold back his tears, but who knew that he was actually looking at the dark clouds in the sky? This damn guy. Hey, you're killing me." Looking at Selena punching his arm, Jiang Hai had no other choice but to smile bitterly. He really did make it up. There was no sincerity in it at all. He had never been a person who tortured himself. What love story? Do you think you're watching a Korean drama? Jiang Hai was not interested in acting in Korean films. Japanese films were not bad, especially the SW series. He was still very interested. Cough. How could an ordinary person understand the sorrow of an old driver? You bastard, I thought I really poked at your sore spot. Damn it, damn it. Looking at Jiang Hai's mischievous smile, Selena was really angry. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough strength to fight back. She hit Jiang Hai until her hand hurt, but nothing happened to Jiang Hai. In the end, he could only look at her angrily. Okay, I admit it. I'm actually a stinky loser. What girlfriend? Sigh, I don't exist. If it wasn't because of the accident at home, I might still be a single dog now. Looking at her angry look, Jiang Hai also laughed at himself. He didn't care about self-deprecating, but now it seemed that Selena's mood was much better. At this time, the car also began to move slowly, heading to the other side of the bridge. But at this time, the atmosphere in the car was not as dignified as before. Single dog. Okay, in fact, I'm also a single dog now. Hearing Jiang Hai's adjective, Selena nodded and said speechlessly, looking at the dark clouds in the sky, sometimes she really feels a little lonely. I'll tell you a way, an old dog's way to solve the problem of being single. Seeing that her aura was about to become low again, Jiang Hai couldn't help laughing, and then said to her. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, she looked at him curiously again. If you feel lonely, you can find a small room, turn off the light, and play a horror movie. Looking at Selena, Jiang Hai said seriously, but his words made Selena somewhat puzzled. Why? Won't you be afraid? Looking at Jiang Hai's serious look, Selena asked with a serious face. I'm afraid. So in a while, you will feel that you are not alone in this room. Sure enough, as soon as Jiang Hai finished his answer, Selena was full of energy again, waving her small fists and punching Jiang Hai. Of course, she also knew that Jiang Hai was taking a taxi now, so when she hit Jiang Hai, she hit Jiang Hai's thigh. When she felt the pain in her hand, Selena couldn't help but look at Jiang Hai with a reproachful look and couldn't help but laugh. Why didn't I realize that your mouth is so sweet? Tell me, you used this method to deceive a lot of women. Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena said with a serious face. From a woman's perspective, a sense of humor is one of the criteria to measure a man. Of course, this criterion has to be ranked after appearance, height, wealth, and so on, but is also one of the criteria. Jiang Hai, although not handsome, is not too ugly. He is more than 9 meters tall, which is not bad. She followed Prawalton to discuss business with Jiang Hai, so she naturally knows that Jiang Hai's wealth is quite high. So in this case, Jiang Hai's sense of humor made her feel like she discovered a new world. Hey, don't say that. I'm still a C-man. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said with a shy face. Ha, don't think that I don't know. Let's not talk about the distant past. Let's talk about yesterday. When I got in the car, there were 2 girls in it. Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena said provocatively, Hey, I just want to talk to them about life and ideals. It doesn't count. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said casually, They don't count? Okay, I didn't see it with my own eyes. You can still deny it, but what about me? Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena patted Jiang Hai's arm and stared at Jiang Hai with her big eyes with a serious face, which made Jiang Hai a little embarrassed. Hey, you took advantage of me, and you still have the nerve to ask me. You're not married yet. Your shamelessness really makes people hate you. I really want to kick you out of the car. Hearing Jiang Hai say this, Selena was so angry that she laughed. She wanted to hit him, but her hands hurt so much that she could only say this with hatred. If you kick me out, no one will drive. Jiang Hai waved his hand and laughed. No one will drive? Do you think I don't have a driver's license? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena exploded again. I'm not saying that you don't know how to drive. I'm saying that you're short. He glanced at Selena's height. In fact, Selena wasn't tall. Justin Bieber, that dwarf, was like an American version of a certain someone. He could jump up and punch Yao Ming's ankle. Even with his height, he was half a head taller than Selena. Her height of 165 meters was just right. Hey, you're digging your own grave. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena finally couldn't hold it in anymore and pounced on Jiang Hai. Chapter 369. Then I'm leaving. Remember to call me if you have time. After getting out of the car, Selena Gomez glanced at Jiang Hai, who also got out of the car and stood in front of the car looking at her. She hesitated for a moment and spoke. After all, after what happened last night, the relationship between the two was not as casual as before. In addition, when they drove here, the two had some communication, so the two didn't feel so unfamiliar. Of course, hearing Selena's words, Jiang Hai nodded immediately. He naturally wouldn't refuse this suggestion. Then I'm leaving. Selena was very sure that she had exchanged phone numbers with Jiang Hai. So after hearing Jiang Hai's straightforward answer without any hesitation, her little face couldn't help but chuckle. She then turned her head and walked into her studio. Watching her figure slowly disappear, Jiang Hai, who was leaning against the car, couldn't help but curl his lips. It seemed that he didn't know what to do in the future. Now he could only take one step at a time. Watching Selena's back disappear, Jiang Hai stretched his body and returned to the driver's seat. He then drove the car away from here. But he didn't notice that at this time, on the first floor and the second floor of the studio, a pair of eyes were staring at him. On the first floor was Selena Gomez, who had just walked in, and on the second floor was a guy named Anton Slavsky, but not many people in Europe and the United States knew his name. His stage name was ZDD, a well-known music producer and DJ in the United States. He was very famous in the circle. And now Selena Gomez was working with him. Of course, he had other thoughts. As for Selena Gomez, who was downstairs, watching Jiang Hai leave, she didn't know what to say. She knew that Jiang Hai was not a good home, but women always had a different feeling for people who had sex with them. This was what Selena Gomez was struggling with at this time. At that moment, the phone that she had set to silent yesterday vibrated again. Looking at the name on the screen, she hesitated for a moment before picking it up. She listened to the concerned and gentle words on the other end of the phone, but her face remained expressionless. I'm sorry, I don't think I misunderstood anything. Let's not meet again in the future because I already have someone I like. Facing the gentle female voice on the other side of the phone, Selena Gomez didn't want what happened last night to happen again. So she said stiffly to the person. After saying that, she directly hung up the phone and put the person on the blacklist. She didn't know if the person would take revenge on her after she said that, but when she thought of Jiang Hai, the original sense of crisis gradually disappeared. Because she knew that when she was desperate, there was still a man she could rely on. However, Jiang Hai didn't know this now. After he left here, he was ready to go back to his hotel to sleep, because he really felt that there was nothing fun to do. Although the place last night was interesting. But this time, Jiang Hai didn't want to go again for the time being. Sometimes, it wasn't a good choice to stay in an overly excited state. Recently, he felt that he seemed to have more and more needs in that area, and it was getting higher and higher. This made him a little worried. There was no land that could be plowed, only cows that were tired to death. Although he now has twice the physical fitness of a human being, if he always drags 2 or 3 people, he will be finished sooner or later. It's better to be careful. As the world's largest city, traffic jams are normal. When Jiang Hai returned to the Manhattan area, his car was stuck again. When he was bored, he couldn't help but think of Selena Gomez's words, saying that he would call her. At the same time, he was surprised. It seems that he hasn't played with his mobile phone for a long time. Hey, where's my phone? Touching his trouser pocket, Jiang Hai muttered strangely. Looking around, he found that his coat was about to be stuffed under the back seat at this time. Jiang Hai couldn't help but mutter. Fortunately, his coat was not a suit, but an ordinary outdoor sportswear. He didn't need to worry about it getting dirty. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome. He reached over and pulled the coat over. Sure enough, Jiang Hai's mobile phone was in the coat. But at this time, the battery of the mobile phone had already been used up. Although Jiang Hai has a lot of money, he doesn't care much about mobile phones. So now he only uses the lowest level phone in the United States, Fruit 6 Plus. As mentioned before, this phone is really worthless in the United States. Of course, if you buy it back in China, it is still worth some money. It is worth about 3,000 yuan, which is about 1,000 yuan cheaper. But here in the United States, as long as you use the phone operator's number here, this thing is almost the same as giving it to you for free. To be honest, The apps in Jiang Hai's mobile phone are much more valuable than the phone itself. Because you can't jailbreak here, you'll be caught playing pirated games. All the games, Jiang Hai pays for them. This phone's standby time is not too long. Now that it is turned off, it naturally has no battery. After plugging in the charger, not long after, Jiang Hai turned on the phone again. But just as he turned it on, a series of messages came in. Among them, there are more than 30 missed calls. It is estimated that the last trace of battery of this phone was used up by these calls. One of them is from Moses Adams, and another is from Daliana. Other than that, there is only one number, Prawalton. Looking at these numbers, Jiang Hai can't help but slap his forehead. He just remembered that Selena Gomez went with Prawalton yesterday. It seems that this woman is waiting anxiously. This also made Jiang Hai feel a little embarrassed. After hesitating, he called Daliana first. Daliana really has nothing to do. She just asked about Jiang Hai's situation. Jiang Hai naturally won't tell her where he went last night, so he just laughed it off. Then he called Moses Adams and learned that the town's contract has basically been finalized. When Jiang Hai comes back to sign the transfer, the construction will begin. The final share is almost the same as the last negotiation. Jiang Hai can't help but shake his fist. This is the most important person. After making an appointment with Moses Adams that he will go back tomorrow, Jiang Hai called Prawalton. The phone rang only once before it was picked up. You finally appeared. Jiang Hai, I thought you would hide for a lifetime. As soon as the phone was connected, Prawalton on the other side of the phone said coldly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. What does she mean by hiding for a lifetime? My phone ran out of battery last night. I just charged it now. I saw you make so many calls. Is there a problem with the beef? Looking at Prawalton, Jiang Hai asked curiously. The beef is fine, but there seems to be some problems between us. I don't know where you were last night. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton on the other side of the phone took a deep breath. Her words were like gunpowder. Last night? Where was I last night? Didn't you see me? If you have something to say, just say it. Hearing the strong hostility in her words, Jiang Hai was not so good-tempered. The two said that they were partners, but in fact, the relationship between the two was not particularly close. Because Prawalton always had the air of a monarch. This is what Jiang Hai doesn't like. Many men in the north have chauvinism, which is male chauvinism. Although Jiang Hai is not too serious because of his original living habits, this kind of tone still makes him very uncomfortable. You still have a reason. Where did you take Selena? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton on the other side of the phone also said loudly, You still have a nerve to ask me? You were with Selena. How could you let her be drugged? Listening to Prawalton's questioning, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed for a moment, but his reaction was not slow. He immediately said to her loudly, That's because, Shoo, we can't explain it over the phone. Let's meet. Prawalton listened to Jiang Hai's words and couldn't help but take a deep breath. She and Jiang Hai are partners, so she can't easily fall out with him. Now, Jiang Hai's beef has quickly occupied a considerable share in the upper class, so although Jiang Hai stole her, she can't easily fall out with Jiang Hai. Most importantly, nothing happened between her and Selena Gomez. Yes, the person who called Selena Gomez just now was no one else but her. And for Selena Gomez's words, she was naturally burning with anger. She knew that the person Selena said she fell in love with was very likely Jiang Hai. Whether it was true or not, she had no time to think at this time. Now, she just wanted to see Jiang Hai and destroy his relationship with Selena. Sometimes, women really go crazy for love. If not for Prawalton's many years of capital habits as a businesswoman, she might have already terminated the beef sales contract with Jiang Hai. Most importantly, she couldn't stand her ground. She couldn't possibly say that she was the one who drugged Selena. Okay, where do you want to meet? Although he didn't know why this woman was looking for him, Jiang Hai still decided to meet her. He was also very curious. Why did this woman act as if she had eaten gunpowder? Moreover, Jiang Hai was also very confused. Selena Gomez had always been with her. How did she get drugged? Jiang Hai probably couldn't figure out even if he cracked his head. This Prawalton was actually a big problem. Now that he heard that she wanted to meet him, Jiang Hai agreed. Come to my home, Atlantic City. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.